Hello there, YouTube, and yeah, I'm sorry about being late. I completely and utterly fucking forgot what the time was, and this was completely and utterly all on me. Obviously we have Magic Bollocks with us today, and we obviously have Mr. Ogre with us today. He's back.
Hello.
He's been able to get his internet sorted,
among other things. Hey, but Memes of Destruction is famous. Hey, Memes, I can't believe he graced you here with this because he's famous. He spoke at like this thing. He's on the internet.
indeed. Yes, he spoke at Concord, didn't he? Well done to him on that one.
He touched his soles of his shoes, brushed the same grass that Sargon stood and sweated upon as he delivered a rousing oratory, and then he stood on that same hollowed greasy ground.
Would he have done what I would have done though, and tried to collect the sweat from the mountain dew on the floor?
The blades of grass, each one with a little beating, a little gleaming jewel of sweat glistening on the very tip of it. You delicately pick the blade, thus not to disturb the precious ointment.
Well, Magic Ogre is back. That's a fusion that probably does not need to happen.
Well, in that case, I must be the bollocks then.
I've got photographic proof of that.
Yeah. Tonight, everybody, I'm just the bollocks.
He is the bollocks.
The laughing bollocks. Yeah.
Hey,
that's got a ring to it.
That is actually quite decent, to be fair.
Hello, everybody.
What have you been up to then?
Oh God. Oh Lord.
Because I missed everybody on Wednesday. I had to pull some shit out of my fucking ass to do Wednesday's show.
I feel like I've been raped by a gang of angry Cuban immigrants, denied welfare for the 17th time. That's
See,
how
if
I
you
feel
lived
right
closer to the border, I would probably say that might have happened.
now. Oh, man. They get up here. No, it'd be more likely Mexican. Yeah. Not too many Cubies. There's some. They're hard to spot because what Castro did is he got Che Guevara's over there and they killed the Negros because they're lazy. And they rounded them up. My godmother is actually a very dark black woman named Mrs. Smith that still lives right now in Jamaica. And she knows she was part of the purge. And Mr. Smith and her got the fuck out of there with their kids, Desi and Sammy and Bertram and Freddie. And they've lived a good life here in America. But they've always loathed that they, to this day, I mean, people say we're racist. This is why I want to break this. People say we're racist and horrible. I want to tell you motherfuckers something. There ain't nobody that loves a nigger more than an American or a Englishman. And that's as plain and simple. And it doesn't even matter if they're dregs or if they're the best brother that you've ever met in your life. We want to give everybody a chance. But I think it's getting long in the tooth for me. I did like your speech though, Memes. I've been considering it today. And so I don't want to be the alt-right racist bigot that I've been accused of being. No, I don't think I am. I don't think I am right now, but I don't want it to come to this. It's getting deep to me. But anyway, I just wanted to apologize for every white person on earth. That's it.
Fuck. Fuck. To be fair, I actually did like Memes' speech at Concord. I do think that we do have more things that are similar, more things that bind us together than will distract us and destroy us. I think that's quite evident, and I think we do have to look at that more often, and we have to understand that a lot. So I said good, very well done on your speech, Memes. Very good.
Yeah,
very well done.
Second that. Did you see that, box?
I haven't seen it. No. Can you actually see his face?
No, of course not.
In the very end, you get the best idea of what the brother must look like. He looks like at 6 foot, maybe 6'1". I might be stretching it, but at least 5'10" to 6 foot. Dark hair, beard, kind of medium short, not quite short, Right. And you couldn't tell he's wearing a puffy coat and jeans. No, and I don't know if that was intentional. If they did that to all the speakers or he stood there, but he's talking about wizards and shit, and he's like a mirage there.
We need to be better wizards.
Right. I always pictured Memes as sort of Native American, so I just thought maybe he might have actually been done for cultural appropriation.
No, he looks like one of the famous maybe Mick Jews that come from that area. Like myself, I would be a Scottish Jew, but they would call us a Mick Jew. You know what I mean? Like Donald's, but only Mick Jew.
Yeah, it's fair enough.
A blending of cultures. That's what you get. Beautiful blending.
Speaking of the blending of cultures, that's a great segue into our little Lidl story. If you wouldn't mind popping it up for us, please, Ogre, or do you want me to?
In order, I believe you do, right?
Yeah, from what it was that I sent. Yeah, please.
Oh, it looks like Euronews has a story. Thanks to all the stories are common sense as usual. So good to be back. Switzerland, the land of the don't fuck with us. We don't want to fight. If you come here, we will all shoot you at once. So this is, I've heard, is called Lidl, right? Offers locally grown cannabis to Swiss shoppers. Now, I did notice on this package it says CBD pack. I don't know if they did that to, I don't know if they sell it that has THC in it, but they often say that, just a short disclaimer, they often say that CBD does not get you high. That's incorrect. It doesn't give you the paranoid, buzzy, I want to go fix my carburetor kind of feeling. It gives you sit on the couch and eat Doritos kind of feeling. That's the difference. But so anyway, I just want to point that because it seems very political the way they showed this, folks, and that they are showing what appears to be a packaged amount of CBD heavy cannabis. So Lidl may be the best known store for its cheap groceries and alcohol, or a random selection of household appliances and knickknack. But now the German grocer is also selling locally grown cannabis to its Swiss customers. Since last month, Lidl stores across Switzerland have started selling 2 hemp flowered products as an alternative to tobacco. So now 2 hemp flowered products. That's making me think, boys. For 15 euros, customers can get their hands on 1.5 grams. Not a great price, folks. 7.5 euros. Not a great price. Something like that, whatever that is. A gram, that's not that good. Of premium indoor cultivated Swiss hemp. A 3-gram bag will set you back $16.50. That's getting a little bit better, not much. But the 2 products contain very minimal amounts of tetrahydrocannabinol, the evil psychoactive compound THC. The psychoactive substance is often found in cannabis. However, it's said to be high in cannabinol, CBD, an ingredient in the hemp plant. Let me continue, boys. This is very short, so I can whatever you want me to do.
Just a little bit more, please.
Lidl said the legally cultivatable varieties contain only very small amounts of THC and high proportions of CBD. In 2011, Switzerland's laws changed to allow people over 18 to buy and use cannabis containing no more than 1% THC. But health experts warn against the normalization of the substance. Last year, the charity Addiction Swiss advocate against CBD. What? Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay, this is the reason.
This sounds like something that would, that the voice of one would be fighting on the Death Star. Last year, the charity Addiction Swiss advocate against CBD ingestion during pregnancy because the protective function of the placenta could be modified. Meanwhile, the Federal Office of Public Health says its medicinal effect is for now not clearly ascertained by research. I did notice the word ass is almost in that word.
Thank you very much for reading that, Ogre. That's the main reason why I wanted this story. The simple fact that if it's not clinically supposedly in the EU, obviously we know that it's clinically and FDA approved in some states in the US. But if it's supposed to be approved enough to be in actual European stores, then they can't really hide behind the fucking fact that, it's not tested. Because surely it should have been. Otherwise, why is it in the stores?
Yes. Yeah, I have a lot of problems with that. I just don't have any solid information here, so all I could give you is my opinions. I will say this: CBD and high content CBD plants that are easily cloned, easily seeded and reproduced. No, propagated is the word to use. I just don't want to sound like a geek. Easily propagated have just been widely available. They were created in Arizona, I believe, by 2 brothers, and the first strain was called Charlotte's Web because there was a young girl that they were giving, I believe it was upwards of 20 different kinds of psychoactive drugs made by men in a laboratory. And a little dose of this CBD would stop her seizures. I mean, louder. The little girl's fine right now. You can check it out. Now, of course, this is one anecdotal story, but you can see many of them. There's this hiccuping. I don't want to go on too long. I just want to say that this is a lie. And I don't know if it's an intentional lie, if it's a malevolent lie or benevolent lie. I have no idea. I don't know if these people are just trying to err on the side of, oh, my children, or if they really don't know that CBD is actually one of the most beneficial things a human being can put in their body. I'm not even kidding you. Do the research on it. You see what it could do to a human being.
Well, that's the point that I was trying to get across in this. I mean, Cabbage Patch has obviously come out and said, oh, they're not in the EU. No, they're not in the EU, but they also are under the same, not stringent rules, but they're under some of the rules that actually happens from the EU. Not completely, but generally. And they still have to go through the same point of actually making sure it's testable to make sure that it actually can go into the stores. Otherwise, it still wouldn't work. It still has to be approved by their medical association, even if it's not the European Medical Association. It still has to be approved. So that's the reason why I was saying that it's a European thing. I was trying to lump it all in together, but for pedanticness' sake, yes, Switzerland is not in the EU, but still regulates itself with a medical profession. So it still needs to be rectified and certified by Switzerland in general. So I just wanted to put that out there. I mean, I'm quite interested in this story because if we're having problems ourselves with certain children that can't use the idea of cannabis to actually help them, and it's cannabis oils as well. So it's not even like buying any of the hemp from the plant at all. It's a case of using oils to rub on the chest to relieve seizures. If we can't even have that in our own country, exactly. If we can't have that in our own country, then why is it a case that it can be approved in other countries, but why isn't our country approving it? I just don't see the logic there.
Your government hates you.
That is true. That is true. Do you have anything to say on it, Magic Bollocks, at all?
Well, my sort of attitude towards the Swiss getting it is a bit strange because it's a very sensible country. I've only been there twice, I think, and everything's expensive, but nothing happens there. It is one of the most dullest countries you can ever visit in your life. So I don't really understand why they would want anything that they could potentially take to make themselves high, because it's just, there's nothing to be stressed about in that country. I mean, the most interesting thing about Zurich, the most interesting thing I could find out about Zurich is that it makes more false teeth per capita than any other fucking city in the world. That's it. So,
because of all the chocolate they eat, then.
but yeah, it's a wasted place to have that product sold. I think that the sort of the French and the British could definitely use it more and make better use of it at the moment.
Yeah, but for me, it's a case of it's Lidl. No other company in Switzerland at this moment in time is actually selling any of it. It's just Lidl that's decided they can, and they've tried to go on the organic route and blah blah blah. But it's a case of it's Lidl. I mean, most people in England, I'm sorry, Ogre, obviously you're not gonna get this completely. Think of it as something like what do you call it? A Walmart or something that's really really cheap that sells everything.
Well, they said they sell cigarettes and whiskey. So I mean, the idea that it would be bad that they sell marijuana that's just high in CBD, that's insane.
No, I understand your premise. It's just a case that nowhere else in the actual point would sell it, and yet Lidl, one of the smallest, well, maybe not the smallest, but the cheapest idea of stores where it would be the cheapest thing that you could think of, cheapest place, like a pound store or something like that, or a dollar store, or whatever, something that cheap would be selling something like that. It just it boggles my mind on how they can get away with that if nobody else can.
I'm looking forward. I've got my buddy's got some shit. It's called Peach Puree from G13's labs in Amsterdam, I do believe. And yeah, I mean, it's just supposed to be like 14% CBD. I have never smoked marijuana. Probably the highest CBD content I've ever had has been like 0.5, maybe 1, maybe. And I'd say that with some of the really killer shit, like OG Kush, it may be 1.5 to 2. But that's still not a ton. Man, I can't wait to try that 15. It should be the, like, you know, hard day's work, come in, smoke 2 tokes off a joint, and wake up in a chair an hour later and kind of go off to bed with a happy feeling in my heart.
No, that's fair enough. Cabbage Patch has made another comment in there, so I just wanted to clarify. Maybe I didn't explain what I was meaning. I wouldn't say, "Oh my God, Lidl was selling it in Switzerland, so I wanted to sell it in Germany or in the UK." I'm not saying that. I'm saying that Lidl, as the cheapest shop probably in Switzerland, to use the quotes of whatever you want for that, you can have whatever Switzerland's main chain is for themselves. Why aren't they selling it? Why is it only one of what you would consider a small shop or a cheap shop that's selling it? Not bothered about the laws in different countries. I'm saying, why is it only Lidl that's doing this? And why is it a story because of Lidl? That's what I was trying to get at.
Yeah, is there some political reason? I mean, I don't know what you're getting at there. Is it? I mean, maybe it's. Are they donating to the wrong party?
Oh, actually, I've just had a thought. Maybe it's because with us leaving in just under a year, they're desperate to get the sensible Swiss all stoned off their tits, and they'll agree to actually come full into the EU to make up for our shortfall.
Yes,
possibly.
That's not a bad idea. They should bomb them with something better than that, though. I mean, give them the real deal. Drop some fucking Cinderella 99 over there, man, and bulk some New York City diesel. Drop that shit. Drop that shit by the metric ton, just right downtown with rolling papers. It'd be like, get it on. They'd be like, yeah, fuck it, let's join the EU. What bad could happen?
See, I absolutely like the idea of being able to do stuff like that and making this sort of stuff legal. I mean, I have my reservations about other things, but this I have no problem with. It's just a case for me. It's just, why is it only Lidl that's doing it? Why aren't any other shops in Switzerland doing it? That's the problem I have. Why is it only this place that's doing it? Why can't it be everywhere?
Crybabies. Who knows, man? That's my guess. This is but I tell you what, I don't know what you boys think, but as soon as Lidl makes some cash, which they will, people be going in there, buying their CBD, and other people are going to sell it too. Just the way it is.
No,
it's all about money. I mean, come on, that's what makes the world go round. The answer to 9 out of 10 questions is money, and the other one's no.
True on that one. Do you have any sort of anybody else have anything to say on it? I mean, I'm absolutely for it. I wish it went all the way around the world, so to speak. But
come on, man, we got like 7 stories. I don't want to be a bitch or a crybaby, but it's my job.
No, I'm happy with that. I don't have anything really else to say. It's just a case of me.
Well, I do. I just, if next time in Switzerland, Common Sense, do you want me to pick you some up?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
But you know what? But Bollocks, that is a good point. But I'm sorry, unless you were going to say some comments.
No, I had exactly the same thing as what I think you did, Ogre. That's such a great point. That what happens if you did actually take it from somewhere that's legal and was selling it legally, and it's in the case in everywhere else? Would you be able to transfer it? Would it be classified as a Class C drug or a Class 3 drug when moving it outside of Switzerland? What's the borders issues on it? Can I drive it out from a different area? Can I go to the coast on it? What is the legal ramifications from it? I think that's an excellent fucking point on that one, Mr. Bollocks.
Although, admittedly, when you get it off me, it will be in a contraceptive that's been through my digestive system at least once.
Yes.
Let's just say then I'll just get it off somebody I already know.
I was kind of briefly thinking that it's funny that, I mean, Bollocks don't smoke pot. I don't know if you do. Comments, it's probably best to say you don't, even if you do, because of a situation where your government hates you. If I smoke weed, and who gives a fuck, man? I mean, I don't know any adult human being that's had any kind of contact with people, and I don't mean grandma, Nan, finding out that little Joey smoked a joint, and she don't know. She last time, the only thing she knows is when she was 16, she saw Reefer Madness, and she believed every bit of that shit. And so she don't want little Johnny to chop people up with an axe. That's all. So anyway, I mean, who gives a shit, man? Let them sell what they want. Let the market bear. yeah, man, I can roll on, but you go to the doctor, they will give you all kinds of stuff. They will hand it to you.
Which
And,
will be in one of the stories that we get into
yes.
later on with
Yeah,
11-year-olds.
Yeah, that's not a very good segue, is it? So anyway, looks like Euro News once again. It says doll heads pop up in UK potholes in a repair plea. This is from Stephanie Burnett.
Before we carry on, I just wanted to quickly say that this story is not in any English publication. I can't even find it in the Daily Mail. I can't even find it in the Sun or the Daily Express. I can't find it in any right-wing or left-wing paper or news organization. I only found it on this because I was stumbling over Euronews.
Huh. I probably don't want you to. Yeah. Anyway, got to keep the spirits up, you know. Pig iron production is up to. No, I'm just teasing. Doll heads have been popping up in the southwest of England after one resident took it upon himself to try and fix a problem with potholes. Neville Daytona told Euronews he was getting fed up with the pothole in Warrington, a town in Wiltshire near him, and decided to fill it with dolls' heads to cause amusement among residents. He said he was tired of getting mad with the potholes and used the heads bought from a charity shop to do something amusing for residents, making it look as though someone had fallen down the hole. Kind of funny. Potholes have become a frequent nuisance for many road users in the southwest England after the so-called beast from the east hit the region. Heavy snow and bad weather this winter has taken a toll on the roads. Mr. Daytona says every journey he takes is affected by potholes. He often has to swerve them on his motorcycle. The first doll had stood there for a week, but was later taken away. Daytona then filled the hole with a second, more gleamed up mannequin. The local council has since promised to fix the hole, which has been there for months. Daytona said it got worse after the council previously fixed it. But Neville is keeping into his doll heads to see it at the time of the pothole be fixed for good. He wants it to be fixed for good. Good way to go, Neville.
I just got one thing to quickly say on this one. Magic Bollocks, do you drive a motorcycle?
No.
Ah, it's not you then. Damn it.
I wouldn't use those kind of dolls. I think I probably would have filled it full of flashlights. Then it would have been very funny, you know, driving by and seeing Voice of One fucking the ground.
Yay! He's not even here. We'd still rip on him.
Yep.
Gotcha.
If all else fails, patronize the Irish.
Yeah. Exactly. I do find this story fucking a little bit weird because obviously we've had some council elections and there's been a couple in Plymouth and in that sort of area. I know Wiltshire's not in Plymouth, obviously. I do understand that. But it's interesting that those type of things are all going on and the councils have not been really talking about what they're supposed to be doing and fixing the roads and whatever. And yet, amazing that this story has not been publicized in any English publication that I can find. I'm not saying it hasn't. I'm just saying I haven't found it. And most people know that I do generally look at the news for quite a while. Yeah. And I can't find it. So this story is interesting to me because every time that somebody does something like this with the potholes, the council does it. So we had the person that used to draw dicks around or penises around the fucking potholes. Then you had people that started filling it in with mud and putting plants in there and things like that. It's just, what do you have to do to actually get your council to actually fucking put money out and actually make sure that it's safe to travel to work, to pay your council tax?
That pothole would be dangerous on a motorcycle. I'm not even going to joke about it. That's a pretty deep one. If you hit it right, especially if you were trying to swerve it all to get out of the way of something and you hit that, man, you could be in trouble.
Yep.
And to be fair to the article, it's not. I mean, whoever wrote it, they've obviously got their information from maybe some, you know, council where they've said, "Oh, it's only because since this winter." It's not. Those potholes have been there for a long, long time.
That one has.
What they tend to do as well, it's the shoddy way they fill them with the absolute nastiest, cheapest mix of tarmac they get, and then probably within about 3 months, the road's been dug up again by the water board or the gas fucking board, and then they repair it in the cheapest possible way they can, and it's just an endless cycle of piss poor repair after piss poor repair, till eventually a whole stretch 4 or 5 miles long is closed at the inconvenience of many commuters for 6, 9, 12, 18 months while they put a brand new stretch of road in, completely smooth with a nice new top layer. And then within 3 months, it's ripped all up again because the fucking gas board or the water board are back in again, and it all starts once again.
Oh. Man, I'm glad most of our shit's private, done.
No, it is private, Mr. Ogre. It's just piss poor planning on the part of the companies and the council. You know, why can't they do their repairs when the road's up in the first place? No, they leave it 3 months.
Well, sometimes they actually fucking leave it longer than that.
Yeah, 4 months.
I guess we do have road commissions and shit that make their mind up, but usually if people around bitch long enough, what they do though here, I'll be honest with you, say with this in front is a of me is a paved road that's good shape, but the road right across from me is also dirt on one side and paved on the other. The paved side, well, you can't really grade a pavement. You can send graders down the dirt roads pretty often. Make a long story short, the people bitched and moaned enough to where the county said, okay. And they send, in fact, the guy that did it, the company that owns the company that did it, he buys eggs from me now. But they pave it, of course, and they pave it well, brother. I mean, there's 6 inches of, I'm looking at this, it's not these big white rocks, and it's all pretty much black, nice, good, hard top. Gonna last probably 40 years.
You'd be surprised.
Well, I'm saying this particular one, but to make a long story short, they tack that on everybody's property tax. In other words, your frontage, they measure it. They measure how wide your property is. If you got 50 acres and you got one house on it, they're still going to measure however much of your property hits that road. You are going to pay that percentage of that road. And, you know, they don't make you pay it all at once, but, you know, your property tax is going to go up. And once they make your property tax go up, boys, I'll tell you a little secret. They never let them go back down.
Well, that's true. That's the same for any government.
Do they do it the same way there? Is that how it works? So if they did fix this road, does it go back to the property owners in the area?
No, well, technically it will do. All it does is the council tax might go up, it might not go up, but it's the case that the council will just claim the money back anyway from the centralized government afterwards. So it's a case of the council doesn't lose any money, but we do.
It's tax money anyway.
Yeah. But you saying about the tarmac or the hardtop as you call it, we would call your roads tarmac. Those roads are not done by tarmacking or hardtopping. They are done by literally, basically throwing fucking rocks on top of the road now and literally letting cars drive over it to create the roads. At least that's what's happening where I am.
That's right. Yeah, they won't bother putting the top layer on no more, do they?
I've seen that done here. I have seen it done where they just like put like this thin tar on, spread rocks over it, and then they got these big sweepers that come and sweep up like most of the rocks, but some stay back behind. That's what you're talking about.
Yeah, they don't even really
put
the tar on
shit. That's the worst shit you could.
That's what our style of roads are, mate. That's our what we would call our A roads. So from town to town without going on a highway, that's what our A roads are like. Completely made through that.
I really can't talk much trash because, as I said, one side of the road right to the north of me is paved, and the other side's not. If you go north of here about 10 miles, I'd 50-50. Go 30 miles, and it's probably more dirt than paved. But they do maintain them very well. There's graders that are working every day. The road right here, I say it gets graded at least once a month. So by the time it's getting potholy, man, that grader come by and push both sides up in the middle and come back and make it smooth and flat as a baby's ass.
Yeah, I really wish that we could actually have some actual proper tarmacking again. I know it costs more. I know people are actually saying, oh, but it's not necessarily great for the environment and whatever. I don't give a shit. It's the best fucking style of roads, and the roads don't break underneath.
Well, it's not great for the environment to make a road that is hard on your vehicle either. I mean, if you destroy a vehicle, you got to get another vehicle. You think about the energy and everything.
The vehicles, they get VAT. They get tax on everything that fucking happens, Ogre. They don't give a shit about that.
But you understand the logic, because it takes a lot of energy, a lot of hurt to Mother Earth, so to say, to make a vehicle, even a motorcycle. So every time they make you break one by these shitty. I mean, it's just funny that they kind of pretend that the pothole that I'm looking at right here is not a big one. Man, that's a chuck hole. That's a chuck hole.
I just love the doll's face.
Me too. I would like to also know what the speed limit is right here. If it's, if it's 60 kilometers, man, that's really bad. I mean, you're flying low. I don't care if you're in a car now. That's getting to the point where it's a boom, boom. It's like, holy crap, there goes the shocks.
To be fair, I imagine it would be probably a 50. If it's in a residential area, it'll be down to 30 miles per hour, obviously.
Miles per hour or kilometers?
We do miles per hour. So when I say 30 or 50, it'd be miles.
I guess I didn't know that. I thought you measured everything anyway. Well, it's good to know. That's one thing I don't have to try to figure out in my fucking head when I'm talking to you lads.
Yeah. Just going slightly off topic a little bit. Something's caught my attention. The article that's right next to that picture.
No,
5 reasons why a DNA test is the perfect Mother's Day gift.
Oh, right here.
That's fun. What a way to reward your mother by finding out she was actually shagging the milkman.
Yes.
Pretty much. Yeah.
That's a Mother's Day gift. Yep. Right. Yeah. In that case, my mom's getting nothing.
Well, you gotta love some of the pop-ups on the side.
Sorry, I was looking at the picture of the doll and I suddenly saw that and he's like, what the fucking hell?
Is that a dude? I thought this was a dude right here.
No, anyway. No. That's a woman with a baby.
It's a traditional trap.
Yes, yeah. Traditional. It's a retro trap. Yes,
retro trap. Yeah.
My goodness.
Fuck, we're going back tonight.
Oh, that's the reason they want the DNA test, to say your mother's your father,
or your father's your mother,
or your father's your mother.
Oh shit.
Let's go and do one of the hardest stories that everyone's going to lose their shit on.
Yeah, this is a great one right here from Euro News out of Germany. This is from Chris Harris. It's from Chris Harris. You gotta love them crowds. They try to destroy the fucking world. Now what are they doing? Trying to make up for it with all this. Oh my. Anyway, so man told to pay child support to ex-wife despite in vitro fertilization. I think that's what it means. I would say in utero, but I'm pretty sure it means in vitro fertilization. Dupe. Remember that word, dupe. Y'all are going to love this one. Y'all are going to love this story. This is a great one, Connor. A man in Germany has been told to pay financial support for a child he didn't agree to have. It has emerged. 5 years ago, Carl, 37, and his then wife, Inga, whatever, had her eggs frozen so they could have children later in life, according to Dutch, whatever. I'm not going to get all these. Willy, whatever. They had been fertilized with his sperm. Okay. So these eggs are frozen with his sperm and fertilized. But after the pair divorced, Inga twice forged his signature so she could undergo in vitro fertilization treatment and use the egg. She gave birth to a baby boy, and Carl, as the father, became obligated to pay child support to his 42-year-old ex-wife. He launched a lawsuit, but a regional court in Munich ruled he must pay up, even though the child has been conceived without his consent, without his penis entering her. Oh, my goodness. The decision made by the court's medical malpractice section is not legally binding, according to the German publisher. Your view, did you know Carl? Well, anyway, that's for the dumb people down there. So I don't got much to say on this other than I've heard horror stories of women like saving semen and sticking it up in there or whatever, putting holes in condoms and all kinds of stuff. So I don't know. I think in this day and age, it should be a written agreement if the father would ever to be held liable. So the woman should have to say, listen, if you want a piece of poontang, tonight, you have to sign this paper. And if it's able to do two things, you really got to want to get laid. When you sign a paper, say that if any child emerges from this union, I take responsibility for half of said child's developmental costs. You dig it? Anyway, I know this is crazy, man. That dude should be able to sue her for stealing his sperm.
I don't know if you think he should be able to sue her. It's a case in this story, and it states there in the middle of the story that this woman forged his signature twice. If the signature is forged, that means that this gentleman did not sign anything which does not give her permission to use the eggs and his sperm. Because as it was conjoined at that moment in time, as you quite rightly said, both were being infertilized or fertilized, it's a case of that means it's a joint decision at that point, which is why she faked his signature twice to be able to go through with this point. So it's a case to me that the actual medical practice should be the one that is sued and should take liability for making mummy a baby mama.
Man, that's you got to admit, though, that's amazing right there. That picture, it's like all hail the bottle. Anybody ever everybody read Brave New World?
Hey, there's a test tube with our name on it.
Yeah, so at least one person has. No, it just reminds me of that when I see that. It's like, wow, it is amazing. I wonder if they're gonna box canoskify or whatever that. Anyway, carry on, crack on, act like I said nothing.
No, I do honestly think that it's a case of this woman has come out. Oh, even if it was a man, I'd still be as outraged if it was a man. I mean, it's harder for a man to do that, but I would be fucking really outraged if a man or a woman was able to go into a medical practice, forge their partner's signature to be able to have the continuation of the IVF treatment that they foregoed a couple of years ago, or in one case, in the next case, I think it's a decade, and a case of trying to actually find out what's going on and then go to a malpractice suit with this actually being told, because obviously they've got their information from somewhere, this news station. I've been told that it's been forged twice, but yet baby daddy is now going to be held accountable and not the people that have let a woman forge his signature for it. I don't see where the logic is in that.
I mean, I just don't see how this. I can't believe this is a thing. That they're forcing this dude to pay for sure. I, honest to God, I'll stand up to gates of hell and say he should be able to do something legally, saying you actually took something, you forged my signature, you used my biological essence, my purity of essence to create life without my consent. You know, so not only am I not going to pay, in fact, why not just say, you know what, since you're such a horrible person, just a truly shitty human being, I'm taking the child and you're going to pay me.
I've got a different opinion on this one, a little bit on this, and that is, if she's obviously done this, it's a case of, to me, isn't she liable for forging another person's life on this point? And I'm talking about the babies. So does that mean that she's actually forcibly kidnapping? Because there's no actual point of will of that child ever wanting to be conceived at all between anybody.
Like the sperm finding its way, you mean?
Well, yeah, because it's done under false pretenses. Surely there's a way. It's like trying to nick a baby that you're trying to adopt. I know that the baby would already be in existence, but it's a case of falsifying evidence and falsifying points to be able to get what you want. Surely that's a form of criminality. Surely.
Trying to think about that question just blew my fucking mind. I'm trying to think about what you said. It's like, you know, I mean, I swear my life is just blowing my mind. So help me understand this. Because the child, because there was no actual deposit of an egg that planted itself in the wall of the uterus, and then there was not an actual sperm that fought against millions of others and found its way to the embryonic fluid, whatever, and then attached the egg. Because of that, that's what you mean? So this life was forced on this being.
Well, no, not generally, because that's just the way that life is generally. It's always forced upon you. Life's never a choice. Life's
well, no, but it's really random. No, okay. Anyway, I'm just trying to wrap my head around the question.
No, the reason that I'm trying to suggest it in this way is because if you were to have an adopted baby, an already grown baby, and you were to have it into this point where this woman falsified signatures to get this baby, we would classify that as kidnap and neglect, and obviously all the other bits and pieces that go with it.
We should shoot her.
Surely there should be something that you should be able to transfer from that to this, because she has literally tried to force and fabricate everything to be able to get this baby out.
She should be drugged on the street, shot like a dog.
Probably not. But
given to
still needs to be held accountable for what's actually fucking happened, and the fact that she's. See, the thing is, she could quite easily have this, and then not have the bloke in charge, and not have the bloke in charge with this, or in cahoots with it, and just go on her merry way. But she's obviously doing this so that he has to pay some form of maintenance, because otherwise, why would you involve the father in it if you just wanted the kid?
I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Common Sense, which is that she knew damn well that he would be liable. And with the courts the way they are these days, I mean, if she'd have actually nicked one of his Johnnies and poured it in herself, they probably would have still awarded her his percentage of his paycheck every day. And the worst thing is like you said, it's they know that she deliberately forged his signature. She's committed fraud. So maybe there will be more to this, which is he does eventually take her to court, and he does actually sue her, which will probably just end up being a reduction in the amount of money he has to pay her for the child.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But it is a bit of a clusterfuck they've ended up in. That's why that's why I'm not a big fan of all this fucking shit with taking eggs, sperms, freezing them, and all that. Especially she's 42. She's had this kid, so it's that whole messing with nature stuff again. And it just things like that, boys, that just make me glad that over the course of my years, I think more of my semen has ended up at the end of my sock than it has done in a woman or a test tube.
You're better off that way,
actually. And I'm glad
off that way. Better off that way. Let me tell you something. And when Mrs. Ogre got a tubes time, we were married for something to the effect of 13 years. And for 13 years, there was no fire hose on the fire. You know what I mean? There was always somewhere else, completely somewhere else. And so many times they're asked, well, what do you do? How do you do? And the answer was, Mrs. Ogre would be like, well, I take the pill. And then I would always give the other answer. I put it, the rule of thumb is you shoot the happy ending happens anywhere but in the vag.
Yeah.
Anywhere, just about anywhere, not even around the vag, dude. Just stay away from it. And we will desire because we want to there's something inside of us was procreate. So why, and who knows why? I mean, goodness knows why. You can shoot at many other places that are just as fantastic than inside of a vagina. But until the tube's tied, and then I don't know, it's just habit, so it kind of stay that way. But anyway, no, children are the bane of society. They should be done away with, and find some way to possibly upload the collective conscious to machines, and then the new and improved human race could carry on for eternity.
I honestly thought you were going to segue into telling us that you used to do the Spider-Man, Mr. Ogre.
No.
It's a man who can do that and get it timed perfectly. I admire.
No, but you know what? I was obviously joking. I love kids, but listen, folks, if there's any doubt in one's mind at all, then be an adult. Take the proper precautions. And if a woman does any of these things, takes I believe I heard the term Johnny. Is that like a rubber? Does that mean a prophylactic?
That's a rubber. That's what we
So if a woman takes a Johnny and pours it into her, then that should definitely, I mean, that's against, that should be somewhat, I don't know if it's against the law, but the male should have should have no responsibility there. None.
But that's the same principle in this fucking story, though. She's had to falsify written documents that have been accepted by the actual medical practice because she's obviously paid some form of money under the table to get it falsified. Because otherwise, they should have known. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to say, "Oh yeah, it's falsified." To me, it's just I don't understand this. I don't understand how you can go into any sort of form of practice and being able to falsify a document to say, "Oh yeah, that person is definitely interested in having a baby, and that we're definitely together." So why isn't he here? He's surely if you're interested in having a child, then you would be together. Yeah, he's working. It's okay. How did they not go through any sort of that sort of process?
Yeah.
I think Ogre gave the answer earlier on, which is money makes the world go round.
I thought you were just going to say drag her out in the street and shoot her.
No, well, potentially. I don't normally. That doesn't normally tend to.
Germans, they shoot people. They hang people at the drop of a hat.
That's the
you were sweeping up, and you were in Bougainville sweeping up. You swept the fucking floor, and you next thing in your head swinging from a rope.
Yes, I was thinking more along the lines of these new drugged up Swiss. That's probably what we're doing it.
Oh,
but they're going to be really happy though. They're smoking cannabis.
Yeah, but they're boring people. You don't know the effect it's going to have on them.
Saying. You said something that kind of broke my heart. I'm taking to heart, and we do got to move on. But Switzerland's that bad? I mean, would you recommend a yank that was going that far to even go there?
It's a beautiful country, Mr. Ogre, but you will be bored. It is just
even a bar. There's not like you never found a localing water hole. It's like, all right, I actually found this spot. There's blokes in there just partying or something.
You will find it boring because they do not drink like we do, and it is incredibly expensive.
Huh? Don't drink. God save them. Well, anyway,
It's fine. You can falsify a baby, but if you don't drink, god damn it, you need saving.
oh no, I said anyway. I was thinking as a German would think. I don't know. That's a very interesting story. I got to give it up for the fact that we can now do what I would call in utero fertilization, IV, whatever they want to call it. That's amazing, man. It does make me think of Brave New World. And now with a law like that, I mean, what's next? Is when will the state be able to say, you know what? You're a strong, fit lad. What are you, 18? Yeah, take this cup, go in there, some porn for you. Put the cup in the slot. And it's like, oh, look at this. You're a beautiful young girl. What do you run the quarter mile in? Oh, my goodness. You know, well, step right over here. It's just going to take an hour. Draw the egg out. You see what I mean? Now they can make new kids. Well, people might say, I am crazy. Remember Lebensborn?
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, they used to have like, anyway, I'm not going to a history lesson. But for those of you that don't know very quickly, the Germans did have it set up where the beautiful young girls would be in one place, beautiful young boys would be in another place. It was just a short walk to meet. They let them meet, swim, and fuck. The babies were taken away, raised by nurses. The Hitler Youth, man. What an amazing concept.
Maybe not amazing, but the idea was an idea.
That's an amazing concept. Not good. No, I'm just saying that is when I first saw that, that's what that makes me think of, though. If you want to know the guy, most of what I said about that story was a joke, because it's a joke. A woman should not be able to get anybody to pay for anything. But that, you know, I mean, that's when they allow laws like that, it's not a very large step, boys, to Lebensborn. It's not a very large step to saying, well, you know, look, we let this woman do it. Why can't we better aren't they losing population in Switzerland like they are in a lot of the countries over there? What's stop them from just fucking manufacturing? They do speak German, I believe.
Yeah, they are doing that sort of stuff. I mean, to me, though, it needs to be manufactured, as you quite rightly said. It needs to be manufactured with two parents' consent, though. It can't just be manufactured because you need to fill a population void that's being filled with migrants. As much as I dislike illegal immigrants coming into countries and things like that, it still can't be done because of those reasons. It has to be done for the actual populace of the human race, not because we need it.
I feel like this is unfair. You boys must be terrified because I've now drifted off into making fun of the Germans. And we all know that if you make even slightly light fun of the Germans, you want every Jew on earth to fucking die. And you hate them. And you also hate somehow black people, everybody else, if they're not white. And probably from your country. So you might hate me.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
Right.
I think that one is a bit of a leap.
Yes. Anything else, gentlemen? Any last word on that one?
Not for me, no.
BBC News. Finally, a reputable news source. Thank you, Common Sense. This is by someone whose name fascinated me, Chi-Chi Izundu. This is Xanax.
I love the name Chi-Chi because Means of Destructions will know exactly where I'm going to go with that. And that's Dragon Ball Z and Goku and Chi-Chi and all that sort of stuff. So I love that name.
Perfect. I just tell you that. I love that handful right there. Look at that. That's the real deal McCoy. Those are fucking bars, baby. You take one of them, you're going to sleep. You're going to sleep. You sleep like a baby for 12 hours, wake up, not remember a fucking thing. Anyway, Xanax. Children as young as 11 taking anxiety drug. Please bear in mind, I believe, our first story of the day when we read this. Children as young as 11 are being treated for abusing the anxiety drug Xanax. The BBC has found, a side note, Xanax and benzos are one of two things on earth that can kill you from the withdrawals. The other being alcoholism, which people often die from diphtheria tremors, DTs. So carrying on. Drug Charity Addiction, a name that sounds very familiar here, folks, said it was also a 13-year-old's dealing the tranquilizer on school premises. The BBC has seen a number of letters from head teachers to parents raising concerns.
Sorry, that's Addaction.
Oh, Addaction. Sorry, that's Addaction. Is that the same? Did I mess it up on the other article too? Wasn't that the same one we heard on the?
I have no fucking idea. I know that the English one is definitely Addaction.
Okay, Drugs Charity Addaction Redaction. That's poet and don't know it. The BBC has seen a number of letters from head teachers to patients raising concerns over increasing drug abuse of prescription medications. One teacher said he feared pupils had made an assumption that taking Xanax was safer than using illegal drugs. Xanax, the brand name for the drug alprazolam, is used to treat anxiety and panic attacks. It makes you feel like a fucking $1,000,000. It is widely prescribed in the USA and can be obtained on private prescription in the UK. But among some teenagers and young adults in Britain, it is increasingly being abused. And we can go on. This is pretty long.
Yeah, well, we don't really need to go on. We can kind of understand.
Yeah, those footballs these ain't shit. These are the ones you give to kids. The .25s are nothing.
Yeah, we can kind of get the idea of what's going on with this story. The fact that they're giving basically hard drugs and obviously legal prescription drugs to fucking 11-year-olds.
I can't imagine that. I mean it, boys. The Ritalin thing is worse. To be in all honesty, it's just so long that I guess it's been accepted. But when I read this, and I think that somewhere there's a doctor, a lot of cases, somebody that's taken psychiatry, psychology, man, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
There's no way, in my humble opinion, which means nothing but my opinion, there's no way on earth I could ever imagine giving someone a 25, maybe. I mean, once you get 30, I'd be a little more liberal with a Xanny. If you came, I was like, hey, man, I heard they chill you out after, and I want to know why you were tensed up, what was going on. But there's no young children. That's crazy.
See, the thing that bothers me is that obviously, as you can attest from experiences and things like that, same as I can, I know fucking Xanax is fucking immensely addictive, as you said at the beginning of this fucking story. So why the fuck are we giving immensely addictive drugs to fucking 11-year-olds? And this is not a case of it might hit, it might not hit.
Oh, no.
If you're taking it for a little while, you are fucking addicted to it because that's what it does.
In 30 days of, even if you were letting a young person, 11-year-old, having a 0.25 as alprazolam, be it Xanax or whatever the other name they want to sell it under, that child has formed an addiction. Within 6 months, a child has formed a serious addiction that the withdrawals will be physical and mental. Within a year, that child would need some serious help and definitely weaning. By the time the child's 12, oh man, there's no. And let's be fair. I said it. I'm for Charlotte's Web. I'm for children if they need to use a drug. Even I mean, I can't see it. No, I can't even say it, boys. I can't say it. I cannot imagine any situation unless they needed to use the alprazolam in a liquid form, such as Versed, like if they were given, because sometimes you got to snow a child under, you understand, because they've been in a bad accident. You need to induce a coma, is the technical term, not snow them under, but you need to induce a coma. So you give them Versed, or you give them a high dose of Valium or a high dose of alprazolam. You can put them right into a coma, and that can be good. So let me say, there may be a time when you could give an 11-year-old Xanax, but it wouldn't look like this, folks. It would not be this.
And it wouldn't be a continuous point to actually treat something that they may or may not have because their parents can't actually fucking parent properly. My kid's too boisterous. He doesn't know what he's doing. He keeps on trying to punch people. Yeah, he's an 11-year-old kid. He's trying to play. Fucking get over it.
Do you know what? You just said what I was thinking, common sense, which is I suspect that the amount of boys who are being given this shit far outweighs the girls, doesn't it?
I imagine so, mate.
And I know they're trying to make out that a teachers voiced concerns, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's the teachers were encouraging this shit, more likely to help stem the flow of toxic masculinity in the boys.
Or the fact that the boys are normally the most destructive people in the classroom, so it kind of helps the teachers if they're kind of docile.
I told my cousin to give all 3 of her children Ritalin or take them out of school. So finally, it was a big heave-ho between them. The kids stayed in school while the heave-ho happened. But finally, it came down to it, man, and they did not have to take it. But I mean, it was a big rigmarole. And I don't think if my uncle wasn't who he was, it would have happened because he could afford the lawyer and whatnot,
Yeah. Well, I think that's what Magic Bollocks is really talking about. I think it's the case that the government in itself seems to want to push this, whatever fucking agenda it is, because it's being if it's going through the schools, it's being backed by the government.
Yes.
And if it's being backed by the government, it doesn't matter what we say and do. We're going to have to try and get a petition together for it even to be talked about. So it's not a case that you could even go to the school and try and cancel it in the school anymore. It's a case of it is being backed by the fucking government. So we now have kids of the age of 11 that are now going around being absolutely fucking drugged out of their fucking heads, probably even higher than some of the fucking druggies that are on street corners. I don't mean that in a horrible way or derogatory way. I'm trying to paint a fucking picture for you to say that 11-year-olds that are being prescribed fucking Xanax are probably as high as the fucking people that you see laying out in the middle of the street. Just picture that for a fucking second. And then think, okay, well, what parent would do that? One that's being completely blinded by the government and is being pushed on by the government.
If I remember right, these are 1 3/4. It might be 1 1/2, 1 3/4. Last time I did that one was, oh man, it's been over 5 years ago. But I'm gonna tell you, I'm 220 pounds. If I was to take one of these Xanaxes right now, oh, I mean, in 15 or 20 minutes, I would, you know, I'm not saying I wouldn't be able to function, but it would be obvious that something had taken place, and if I could even stay awake. I mean, it's hate to keep railing on it, but this is an extremely powerful, extremely addictive drug that only it and one other thing. Why would you give a child something? I just don't get it. They would kill them if they got addicted to it, just to quit it.
I do wonder how much the pharmaceuticals actually donate to political parties these days.
A lot.
My
a lot. It doesn't matter what country you're in, they donate a lot.
They got so much fucking money. You think about Walter White, if anybody knows of Breaking Bad, the series, and it shows him with all his stack. Man, that ain't nothing. They got so much money that they can do whatever they want. Get the kids hooked. And as Common Sense pointed out, I mean, the government gets what it wants. If you track the education system here in the United States, we were #1 in everything in 1974. In everything. We were #1. And you can track that as the U.S. government took over the education system, the more money they spent, the way that we have come down. The graph is a mirror image. The money going up and the position in the world and the intelligence, all of it going down. It's because the government gets what it wants. Why? I don't fucking know, man. I don't.
Because a dumbed down populace is a controllable populace.
That's a lot of it, I believe. Yeah.
Well, just to extrapolate the actual ideas that we've just come up with today. If you have 11-year-olds all the way up to, say, 16-year-olds that are on Xanax in itself, that means that they are dependent on it for the rest of their lives. Because as Ogre's quite rightly pointed out, if they're on it for that length of time, their chemistry in their brains change so fucking much that it's now not a case of them getting high on it. It's a dependent to make sure they function fucking properly. That's how much it changes your chemistry in your brain. Man. And it's a case that these kids are now going to be coming up into our country, and I don't mean that in a fucking we're British and fucking everything else like that. I mean this in a fucking proper way. But they're going to come up into the country and try and actually work out what's going on, try and actually find jobs, trying to find out if they're going to have kids and fucking whatever. It's not really going to fucking happen for them, is it? By that, I mean, every time that they forget to take one, they're going to have mood swings. They're going to be very violent. As Logan's already said, they're going to have so much fucking withdrawal systems. They are going to physically hurt. They're going to be rolled up in pain. And that's if they forget to take 1 or 2 in a fucking day after that length of time. I'm not even exaggerating on that point either.
No, if you got a habit, it takes about 10 hours, you know. So like you said, if you took your morning one, by the time, 5 o'clock rolls around, you're starting to feel the symptoms of withdrawal. That would be bad. It wouldn't be pleasant, Yeah, it's fucked up. I've been through withdrawal and a few different things in my life. Why? I like fucking drugs. I really don't care. I mean, what people think about it. I'm an adult. I'm not an 11-year-old. I wasn't into drugs when I was 11. I didn't get into drugs of any kind until I was, actually out of the house, and I was doing my own thing. But a child, and I think that any human being, if a doctor is going to give you something, you should ask right to his face, would you give me every indication of what this thing can do to me? I know you're in a hurry. I know you want to tell me to read the pamphlet, but is it addictive? How long will be the withdrawals? What's it going to do to me? Because I found that doctors can be very deceiving. In this state that I live in, doctors get more kickbacks than in any other state in the United States, in Michigan. The pharmaceutical, where they're very lax here in their laws. In other words, if the pharmaceutical company can tell a doctor, listen, if you sell Xanax, we'll give you 5% of the sales. So whatever you got for the office visit and everything else, we're going to give you 5% of the Xanax sales there also. So, of course, the doctors, you got to have I don't think that should be allowed. There should be no kickback. You know what that sounds like to me, boys?
Bribery?
It sounds like the fucking mafia, brother. Because that's what you do in the mafia, right? You got the kingpin pushing the dope, pushing the heroin or whatever, and he goes around. You get 5% of what he's making to sell as much heroin as you can. And of course, a lot of those people don't give a fuck if it's 11-year-old kids.
No, and I think that's the fucking problem. I mean, I'm going to go actually a little bit back on previous statements that I've made. Where I would say that I don't like people doing heroin and things like that, I don't like it, but I can understand it. I can understand where they're going. I can understand the premise. I can understand it's an escapism. It's a case of making themselves feel better. I don't understand how a government can give an 11-year-old something similar. No, it's not the same, but something similar, and then say, oh, it's going to help them against their anxiety. I don't understand that. I can understand the 16 to 18-year-old, if he wants to do drugs, fucking go and do it. It's your life. But not a fucking 11-year-old. And then it's sanctioned by fucking government. Because, you know, it's easier to control them. It's easier to push through this agenda about schools and everything else like that. And if we get to the last story, you'll be able to see that there is an agenda with schools where people are actually saying, oh, you know that there's no free speech in campus and everything else like that. Apparently there isn't free speech, and the actual government is actually trying to make sure that we actually implement it again. So it already tells you that the fucking government's already involved in education.
Straight out of the BBC News, it says free speech pledge for universities. Is that what you were hinting at?
Yeah. Yes, please.
By Sean Collin. Wow, look at that, man. Sometimes I look at these pictures. I don't know if they're supposed to get flattering pictures, but look at that. My Lord. You wouldn't want to wake up. That's what you call a gnawer. We call it a gnawer because when you wake up in the morning, you gnaw your fucking arm off like a rat in a trap. Just get away. You don't want to wake her up, you know? That's a gnawer. Anyway, sorry about that. I guess it's probably a little sexist of me. That's just the way it is. So here we go. Free speech in universities has to be protected from chilling intolerance and overzealous regulations, says the university's minister, Sam Guayama. The minister has met university and student leaders on Tuesday to create a more straightforward set of guidelines for ensuring open debate on campus. Mr. Guayama warned unfashionable or unpopular views should not be stifled. Sir Michael Barber, who chairs the Office for Students, said challenging ideas had a right to be heard. The meeting of higher education groups and government described as a free speech summit. What a beautiful name that is. That just, I can hear never mind. I can hear, Rule Britannica playing in the background as I read this. Is a response to concerns that universities have become hostile places for freedom of expression. And I can continue maybe to no platforming. How far do you want me to go, boss? No platforming.
To be fair, I think we kind of get the premise of the story, to be fair. We know that it's a case of the universities themselves, and generally it's to do with students themselves actually coming out and making sure that they no platform people. Now, the MP in this, or the person that's actually trying to fight for free speech, is kind of patsy in it by saying that, oh, it's not just the fact that students do this, it's also the red tape, because, we don't understand how it can work that way and blah, blah, blah. So it's more of a case of that they're still trying to patsy the idea and not blame it on the actual, the structure put in place by the universities. But, they're trying, bless them. They're fucking trying. So we got to give them some credit on that. Again, it's another story that really pisses me off. The fact that the idea of the process of universities, or the process of the idea of actually getting education and be able to have freedom of thought, to be able to think any way that you want to think and express it the way that you're supposed to be and be challenged on it. And yet, every single university, at least in Western civilization, doesn't seem to actually even provide the idea of freedom of thought anymore. Not even freedom of expression, but you can't even think the way that you want to think anymore. You can't even try and come up with any sort of ideas that are slightly different. No. Otherwise, the teacher's going to fucking slap you on your wrist and tell you can't do anything, and you're not going to pass, not unless you do it my way. And then we want to talk about the fucking idea of no platforming people when we can't even platform our own students.
Oh. Yeah, I don't believe in it. No platforming.
I don't
Yeah.
think that we should no platform anybody. Go ahead, Magic.
I'm a little confused about when it all changed, because it definitely wasn't like that in the early noughties anyway. You go to university and you would literally spend as little time in lectures as possible, because all you cared about was getting pissed up with your mates. And sort of memory serves that there probably were hard leftists at the time, but they felt like a fringe, the tiny little minority that everyone used to ignore and mock. Yeah, there's always going to be people who have political persuasions when you're in places like that, and of course, for a lot of them, it's their first taste of freedom without mummy and daddy shackling them down with their rules. But no, I don't really remember any of this sort of fucking nonsense. So I don't know when it exactly changed. And, maybe when I look back, there probably were a lot of lecturers who were a bit sort of, maybe left leaning, but it wasn't to the point of literally shoving it in your face. And, if you dare to, question any of the rhetoric, you would be thrown out. So I don't know exactly when all this really kicked off. It could be the theory that some YouTubers I watch have said, that they think that we've got to the point where we're getting the first generation of the childcare generation coming through, because sort of those of us who were born in the sort of mid to late 80s were the end of, say, Generation X. Then you moved into the ones that became the millennials, and they were the ones who were really being brought up by the state. They were being brought up with the rules of nobody comes first, second, or third anymore. Everybody's a winner. So they're going into an education system with the mindset of I'm special and I'm entitled. So when they're getting told all this bullshit that you're wonderful people, oh, and by the way, the world's evil and full of Nazis, you ought to fight back against that, they're buying into it.
Competition is bad.
Yeah, the whole, you mustn't compete, you mustn't be better than anybody else, because that's,
boy, does that ever hurt.
Yeah, that's a form of superiority. Oh, and also you're white as well, so you should be ashamed of yourself.
I can't remember if it was you or Cabbage Patch. One of you two was saying that. I don't know. Maybe it was every Englishman I ever met, but I was told by one of y'all, who is more competitive than a 12 or 13-year-old English boy? Maybe, now I say it, I think it was actually Lord Quinn. He was like, they gotta win. Gotta pick apart everyone else, want to be. I mean, it seems to me like your culture as here is very competitive. Why would people want to call it toxic masculinity even? I mean, and it's kind of about deplatforming. I mean, what a way it's emasculating. It's taking away the fundamental boyness that we talk about so often around here. It probably gets a little bit
I suppose if you're trying to promote a ideology that can be easily picked apart, you need to deplatform people who will come along with better ideas, don't you?
You have to, yes. Well, if your ideas are good, they stand the light of sun. They can stand the sunlight. If they're not, well, we'll wither them, die like mold. But that's the beauty.
Let's be honest. Most of these ideas actually stem, or at least have their foundational roots from the idea of communism or Marxism. To me, they're the same thing.
Yeah,
but they have their ideas from. Yeah, they have their ideas from Marxism, which is the idea of putting people against other people because of other social classes or because of social experiences. That's literally all most of these feminist ideas. Masculinity, putting gender against gender. All it is about conquering and dividing. While you're fighting yourselves, you can't look at what's actually happening around. Hence why Jeremy Corbyn in the UK is doing so well. And yes, he didn't do that well on the local elections, but we're quite happy about that point quietly. But it's still that state. It's the fact that because so many people are indoctrinated in this actual idea that intersectionality works, if you divide people into little boxes and then you scream out don't label me, but yet you're still going to label people into different boxes because intersectionality works apparently. Do you not understand the hypocrisy in what you're actually saying in your ideology? It doesn't work. And as you two have already just eloquently just put, it's the case of the ideas themselves can't stand up, because once you have somebody look at it and then go, well, you're contradicting yourself here, here, and here, and you completely trod on your own fucking argument at this point, and you're saying that you want to take away money from these people, but at the same point you're trying to say that you want to give free money to other people. Do you not understand hypocrisy in this statement?
Man, I want to talk about intersectional anti-white racism.
Sorry, you kind of roboted a tiny bit.
Oh, so I want to talk about intersectional anti-white racism.
Well, unfortunately, because in most Western countries it's the case that most white people are the fucking majority at this moment in time, at least, is the fact that you want to have the smaller minorities try to pick up the idea that they are being oppressed by the big majorities, the bourgeoisie versus the proletariat, if you will. And it's still the same ideas that are being perpetuated. It's just a case of changing it and putting it into perspective for people to understand.
I think one of them commie bastards actually wrote about that, how when you couldn't have no more bourgeoisie, where you got to go on and, you know, pit races against each other.
Yeah, it's called cultural Marxism rather than classical Marxism.
I just saw something. I just watched this thing about Bobby Kennedy on Netflix. I hate to really, I'm not necessarily plugging Netflix. If you got some way to steal it, though, watch the Bobby Kennedy for President. It's a 4-part documentary that's worth your time. And they're portraying it. Bobby Kennedy's a great guy. Should have been shot, of course. Too bad Sirhan's still alive. They should have gassed his ass back in 1968, which was the verdict, but they outlawed the death penalty. They were carrying, during this workers' strike in California, they were carrying signs, Cesar Chavez, and I'm not saying he was a good or bad guy. I'm not going to endorse him either, okay? But they're carrying signs with Che Guevara on it, man. And listen, Che Guevara said some things that sound pretty good when you just take the quote and take it and like put it on a billboard or whatever. Doesn't sound too bad. But read any of his books, I don't think he really, it's like his memoirs or whatever that they've compiled into books. And you see basically a dirty, greasy guy that was very racist. He liked to rape people. They were carrying signs with his face on it and still do today. These are the people we need to watch out for. People that glorify butchers. And I don't really want to talk about intersectional white racism, but I think it's funny that they talk about any kind of intersectionality is a made up word by people that spent way too much on their education that is absolutely worth nothing and therefore have to justify their very existence. So they make up fucking words and say that we have to learn them and know their definitions and that we're a problem.
See, that's one thing I fucking hate about these not feminists, but people that are trying to push the idea of fucking gender neutrality and the idea of fucking we're all gender fluid and this and that and whatever other fucking bollocks you want to go into. But it's a case that, oh, you have to learn what the definitions are. Well, I know what the definitions are. What's your definition? Oh, well, I feel, yeah, you're wrong there. You can't have a fucking feeling about a definition. It's a fucking definition. If you want to change the definition, apply to your fucking Merriam-Webster fucking dictionary and get it fucking changed. Other than that, keep to the fucking definitions. That's what they're there for. Don't try and change it because you think you understand what you're actually saying and you don't. Because you start off by saying, I feel. Does that mean that my feeling is different to yours, so my definition of that word's different? Well, guess what? That means definitions have no fucking meaning by definition.
I know, but you should always start your explanation with, well, I fact. Because they feel. Because if you're actually going to state actual scientific evidence and they just come out with, I feel, it's quite worthless, really, isn't it? Because if that's the case of you just whatever you feel is right, that means it can be right. And if that was the case, then I don't think humankind would have really evolved more than just caveman hunter-gatherer, would it? Do I feel like going out and feeding my family today? No, not really. Never mind, they'll starve to death. So maybe the cave down the road might actually have a family where he bothers to go out and feed his family.
Yeah.
But yeah,
correct.
The worst thing of all is these people who buy into all this shit, are people who generally have no understanding about if they got what they wanted, their supposed, communistic utopia. It never is. It's everything but. They go on about how they want to stop the fash, but all they'll end up getting is something similar to what they would have got if the fash was in the first place, even though they never would have been.
See, just quickly, and please carry on afterwards. But one thing that I always really hate, and this is on both sides of any sort of argument you have, you get some people that go, "Oh, we need to use their tactics." So if they use doxing, we're going to dox. Or if you, as you quite rightly said, "Oh, we need to stop fascists." So by you stopping fascists, you're actually being fascist by doing that. Well done on that one, and obviously as well for the doxing. Well done on that. My point that I'm trying to make is that you are fighting against these people, but using their tactics against them, and then wonder why you turn into those type of people. You're losing yourself to win a war, but you're not winning the war. You're only winning the battle, because as soon as you use their tactics, you've lost the war because you become them.
Yep. And that's why the Antifa types, the alt left, as Trump quite rightly called them, and the alt right, they're two sides of the same coin. They just don't realize it.
Who wants to be a fucking commie?
They hate each other because they think they're so politically unaligned, but the only difference is they just want the same political outcome, just with slightly different results, which is the alt left are obsessed with race, whereas the alt right, I suppose, are no, actually I've got that the wrong way around. No, the alt right are obsessed with race, and the alt left are obsessed with a sort of a class of race, if you see what I mean.
Maybe.
Yeah. Apparently, we learned to defeat evil by becoming evil, and that's from the great Bruce Wayne. I mean Batman. Sorry, nobody knows who Bruce Wayne is.
That's some Illuminati agenda shit there. I just watched Doctor Strange last night. Oh, fucking Illuminati shit. Ushering in the very devil himself. It's like, oh, you got to do bad sometimes and work with the bad to do good. That's just, man, don't buy into that shit. That's commie too, man. It's all commies. It's the anti-God or atheist fucking agenda.
Hang on. Remember where you are.
Oh, I'm good. No, it's cool. I mean, you're not part of that. I mean, you could be an atheist or anti-God and still not be a part of that agenda. There's people have their own ideas, but don't enforce them on someone else or try to put it in there some thread through. I mean, you can watch that same story play out in many different movies. Exact same story. Oh, the good people have to do bad in order to do good. And I don't think that's ever true. The lesser of two evils. I don't believe that is a term. That's an oxymoron. There is no lesser of two evils.
No,
how about the greater of two goods?
Yeah, there's still no such thing as that either. It's still just good. You're still just doing good. But no, you do make an exceptionally good point. I mean, I'm gonna name drop a fucking YouTuber. I did a video on fucking months and months and months ago called Jacqueline Glenn, and she was doing a video on how Christian men like their women speak, and saying that they wanted homely women that were able to come home and be a generalized woman, like making the dinner and doing whatever, your stereotypical wife. And she was literally ripping the piss out of him, going, "Oh, well, you'll never have me. You'll never be able to do this. You'll never be able to get me to do that. Oh, should I just accept the Lord for the way it is?" It's just like, my point to her always was, it doesn't really matter what you think, does it? Because it's up to them. And if they get somebody that agrees with their ideology, then they're going to be okay. But it doesn't really matter what you think. It doesn't matter what I think, because that's the idea of secularism. It's the idea of it doesn't matter what you believe and what you practice, as long as it doesn't fucking bother me. And vice versa for me onto you. I shouldn't go to you and tell you, "Oh, well, I don't like your religion. I don't like your conspiracy theory." It doesn't fucking really bother me. It doesn't matter, and it shouldn't matter. I just don't understand people that like to preach to people about their fucking belief system. It's what it is. It's your belief system. Believe what the fuck you want. just be prepared every now and again to deal with people that just don't understand it.
Do you know what? I suspect she's probably now got a massive crush on you, Common Sense.
Who's that? Who? Who? I had to step out for a second. Who's got a crush on him?
Jacqueline Glenn.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, because of the fact you properly showed your alpha traits there. So as much as she hates you, she's definitely got the sort of the schoolgirl crush now, I think.
Considering that I haven't heard of a single video because she, I believe she caught her boyfriend cheating on her. So yeah, that went well for her.
I suspect the woman her boyfriend was cheating on her with is probably the type who is quite happy to be a stay-at-home housewife.
I don't know on that side of things because they were both YouTubers, him and Jacqueline, and I don't really know too much of their story on that one. But
yeah, it would be unfortunate if it was.
Yeah, but if I was to speculate in good humor, I would say that there's probably a very good chance that he was looking for a more wholesome girl. After all, you don't take that one night stand home with your mum, do you?
No, especially if she doesn't speak English either.
Yeah, that's
what about when you're in high school, man? What about when you're in high school? I took a few one night stands. So I didn't meet them, but I would be, you know.
Yeah, that's different.
Snuck them through the basement window kind of deal.
When you take them home to meet the parents.
Yeah. Also, we
don't usually get laid that day.
Also, here, school is when you're below the age of 16. So if you're taking home a girl you're shagging to your mum, I don't think she'd be best pleased.
My mum and dad were fine.
My
mum and dad were fine when I did that.
No, my parents would try to murder me if if they had known I was getting laid.
Ah, okay.
See, my mum and
I didn't have the kind of dad was like.
my mum and dad just said, "Well, make sure that you wear protection, and I'd rather you do it under this roof than go out to a park."
You've got cool parents, Common
My
Sense.
mum and dad knew me so well.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, my dad would call that shacking up, and he wasn't into it.
No,
Yeah.
I suspect a lot of the previous generations, especially the fathers, you know, they acted all preachy and say, "You can't do that in my." What they mean is I'm not getting any, so you're not getting any.
Basically, yeah.
I know it.
There's a reason why people in the past look so stiff.
Yeah, it spread upwards, didn't it?
Well, after you have 7 to 10 children, you're not really supposed to do it no more. Are you? I mean, that was the old way. You hammer it every night till you get 10 youngins, and then it's it.
After that many, I don't suppose you'd have chance to because you wouldn't feel a damn thing.
I'm pretty sure that there was a lot of people that realised that if you shot up the arse, you didn't get them pregnant.
Oh,
I'm
you couldn't
sure
do that
there's
back
so
in them
many
days.
people that knew that.
Couldn't do it back in them days. Maybe that was even before the Spider-Man. So, that's why they had 10, 15, 20 kids, was because they didn't realize there was, a sort of way out of this if they needed to. Just literally 1, 2, 3, whip it out, Spider-Man. And the wife looks very unimpressed.
At the end of it. That means coming on to the end of it when you're finishing. I can't be bothered to do that. That just takes effort.
Hey, mate, I even put the red glove on as well to make it look authentic.
You're just nasty.
Yeah, but just before I fall asleep, at least I know I'm, laughing to myself.
Yeah,
she can wipe the stain off the wall. I'm not doing that.
Spider-Man!
If anybody in the chat happens to not know what I'm talking about, all I can say is grow up.
Yeah, and go onto a comedic website and find out what Spider-Man is. And can you remind us what a couple of more is? Because I'm sure there's an Incredible Hulk, and I can't remember how to do that one.
Yeah, I've heard of the Incredible Hulk as well, but I've heard of different variants of it.
Yeah. No. I'm not going to say nothing.
Yeah, some people might sit a little bit uncomfortably with the definitions I've heard.
Yeah. Fair enough, mate. Fair enough. I can't really say too much on that one.
So, what's the next one?
The next one is going to be local elections, but I'm just going to quickly do something because I'm not sure if Ogre still has problems with his internet or not. I think he's got a bit of problems with his internet, so I'm going to screen share and go to application window because I did not prepare for this.
I know you like screen sharing Common Sense.
I like
there we
sharing
go.
everything. I like sharing everything I do.
Mm.
Right, so obviously this is from Sky News, and obviously a story brought to you in part by the Common Sense guy. So local elections. People barred from voting in areas piloting ID schemes or scheme. Already, can you see what they've already done in quotes?
Barred from voting. Yes.
Yes, they've been barred from voting when they've been asked to produce ID. Yes, this is actually a real story. And yes, apparently a lot of people were actually quite annoyed at this. That people were barred from voting because they didn't have ID. So, some people have been barred from voting in areas piloting a controversial ID scheme for the local elections, according to reports. Bromley, Gosport, Swindon, Watford, and Woking are all testing the scheme, which aims to cut down on voter fraud. At least they actually put in the fucking reason why the actual scheme is in place. So at least we're onto a half decent chance on that one. MPs and councillors have spoken on social media of incidents of people, including elderly residents, being turned away from polling stations for not having the right ID. One councillor in Bromley said he knew of, now get this amazingly big fucking number, 5 people being unable to cast a ballot because of the pilot, and that the scheme was causing long delays in South London Borough. So we had a massive 5 people that were turned away at a ballot station, or a polling station, should we say. You know, massive amount of people that have been turned away there. But whatever. But the presiding officer at one Bromley polling station said only a very small percentage of voters had forgotten or were unable to present identification. The man, who did not want to be named, said people in the borough had been sent 5 pieces. There's a pattern here. 5 pieces of information alerting them to the impending changes, including leaflets and a note with their polling card. So, I mean it in a nice way. It's not like people weren't actually fucking told. So, people actually knew what was going on. The main point of the story, which I don't need to really carry on, is the fact that a lot of people are now complaining that, we've got this pilot scheme in place, but, you know, people were turned away. It's like, yes, because they didn't have ID. Not because they weren't allowed to vote. They could have actually have come back, got their ID or a form of ID, and then gone back to the polling station. That's all they needed to do. They weren't told that they're not allowed to vote because they're horrible people. They were told they can't vote because they don't have ID.
Yeah.
The idea of this is fucking amazing. Please go ahead.
It's like you said, there's that use of the word bar, doesn't it? It makes it sound like they came in, show us your ID, we haven't gone, they get out. And that was it. They weren't allowed back in.
Your name's not on the fucking list. You're not coming in.
Excuse me, mate. Got any proof of ID? No, get out. It's not a fucking pub. Like Common Sense said, you can go home, you can get some form of ID, doesn't matter what it is, some way to prove who you are. Then you go back, you show them, and they say, there's your voting card. See? Simple. But these people are either too fucking bone idle and just went away moaning like fuck to the press that were obviously outside waiting to find somebody who was going to moan about it, or they've just managed to track down a few people of, you know, like the whole 5 of them who didn't get to vote in that one constituency. And it seems to me that I mean, the very fact they use the term controversial because they want to make absolutely certain that the person who's turning up at the voting station is the person who they claim to be. Why is that so controversial? Is it because of the fact that certain parties have done very well out of massive voter fraud in certain parts of the country, where a certain demographic is known very well to commit voter fraud in high numbers? There's nothing controversial about it, about wanting to have fair and legitimate voting in an election. And this whole ridiculous what I can't remember what the term is that some people use, not reverse racism, what's it called, the bigotry of low expectation, which is when they say it's not fair on minorities to expect them to produce ID. Why? Do you think they're so fucking stupid they don't know how to obtain it? Is that what you're saying? Yeah, because that's the way you're making it sound, saying that we shouldn't expect minorities to produce ID. Yes, we should. If they are here legitimately and they have the right to vote, then like everybody who has the right to vote, they should be able to easily prove who they are. Is that such a terrible thing? Only to people who it might negatively affect. And I'm thinking probably more left-leaning parties. So bollocks to what they want. I say bring this in nationwide and let's see how it actually turns out, and let's see if it actually gets some of the voting fraud that we know happened in 2015 and again in 2017, especially 2017, where you had students voting twice because they were registered at 2 addresses, and then you had areas such as Tower Hamlets where you had bust-in members of families voting 5 or 6 times in different polling stations. And you can't tell me that that is not considered a serious problem and a serious issue concerning our democracy. There's nothing wrong with the idea of one man, one vote, but that's exactly how it should be. One man, one vote. Not one man, 10 votes. Not one man and his whole family, 10 votes here, 5 votes there. No, sorry. Either you follow the rules or fuck off.
Yeah, I mean, means of destruction. For classifications of identification, that you don't actually necessarily need to show a British passport or even a driving license. You can actually show something so similar, so easy as a utility bill. That's what they classify as ID in this scheme at this moment in time. Though I have to say that I am actually with bollocks. I actually honestly feel that if you're a citizen, then you be able to get to vote. If you're not a citizen, then it's a case of produce your passport, because obviously you needed to have some form of passport or at least some form of identification to be able to get into the country legally. Whether you be a refugee or not, you still have to have some form of identification to claim your benefits while you're on there. So even they would have a form of identification for you. Even if it's a national insurance card, it's still a form of identification.
Mm-hmm.
So they would be able to find you something. So just bring that down and you'd be absolutely fine. I really do like the idea of actually having a proper fucking identification to be able to do your ballots. As Magic Bullets has literally just said, it will mean one vote for one person. That's all it means. It doesn't mean that Joe Squash on the fucking corner of fucking Basildon Street can go down and go, well, everybody down my street is giving me permission to be able to vote for him, and we all vote Labour. I mean, we all vote for everybody. It boggles my mind, and it's the same thing for immigrants in general. If you've got somebody that says, we're going to give you tons of money if you vote this way, because we're going to help you out, what way are you going to fucking vote? And it's just a case of it just pushes the wrong sort of politics. It doesn't produce politics that actually benefits the country. It's politics that benefits you. And the benefits of you doesn't always actually benefit the country. Because if I don't want to work and somebody's offering me free fucking money, where the fuck am I going to go? Where am I going to vote? And as we all know, there's no such thing as free fucking money. Jensen Quinn, polling cards don't actually class as identification for you to actually vote. It's just to say that you actually live where you live, and it's a point where the address goes to it. So, for instance, if you were living as what it has happened before, if you were living as at a university, so say for instance you moved to Colchester and you were at university there, but you come from London, you could actually get 2 polling cards, one from where you live with your parents in London and one from where you actually were in Colchester. That means you get 2 votes. That means that you can go to London, vote, and then go back to Colchester and vote. And this was actually happening in the actual general election that was called by Theresa May not too long ago. And there's actually stories on it and an actual watchdog that actually started to investigate it. But somehow that managed to fucking get dropped.
Because one of the most suspicious ones of all was Cambridge in 2017 went Labour for the first time ever. It's always been a rock solid Tory seat. And the suspicions is that that was swung by the student vote, by them voting twice.
Yeah. That's it. Doesn't stop anybody from voting twice.
No.
That's the fucking sad thing of it, because they won't correspond the different fucking names.
Yeah,
that's the reason. The main reasons why the watchdogs didn't want to actually go into it, because the ballot papers were being destroyed. I mean, you can even go on to the different points of in the EU referendum that we had when we were using fucking pencils to fucking vote. Where you could actually see people fucking rubbing it out on the fucking in the night shots that they were actually using. People were going through it and then rubbing it out and then going through it again.
It's funny you should say that, Common Sense, because I thought that myself when I did mine, and I always have a pen on me, so I actually put it on in pen.
Yeah, no, I normally take a pen with me when I vote as well.
Yeah.
I never use a pencil.
I noticed something Meme said just a little bit back up. He said that about certain, older generations tend not to have any form of ID. Now, my attitude to this is simple. If you know the rule, which is if you want to vote, you need some form of ID. It is your responsibility to get some form of ID. This old excuse of, well, some people find it difficult to get ID. I don't give a fuck. This is the rules. That's it. If you don't like it, you don't get a vote. That's your fucking problem. This is the whole problem with Western civilization at the moment. It's just constant excuses for fucking useless people. Well, have some individual responsibility, get off your ass and get the fucking ID. If you can't be bothered, you don't get a vote. Tough shit.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, but I've got an easier way of explaining it to anybody. You're saying that these people can't get ID, whether they be black, whether they be coloured, whether they be immigrants, whether they be old, whether they be whatever. How did they get their benefits?
They bothered them, didn't they?
To produce some form of identification to get your benefits. So, benefits. Just a question to everybody in the open world: if they can get a form of identification to get benefits, then why can't they use that to, vote?
Mm-hmm. Now, I understand.
And if they haven't got benefits, I was just going to say, if they haven't got benefits and they're working, how did they get the job if they ain't got identification to prove who they are to get the job? Just saying.
That's very true. I see Moz is saying, but they then demand picture ID. Well, I'm not sure about that. At the moment, as Common Sense said, it's the most basic stuff they're asking for, which is a utility bill is good enough. It's to prove that you live at the address that card was either addressed to or is on the actual ballot paper. That's what they're trying to do. I mean, it might get more if they do roll it out across the country, which I suspect they probably will do, then you will be required to show some kind of ID. But then these days, most people do have a form of ID, because how many people these days generally don't have driving licenses or don't have passports? There aren't that many. So ID really isn't a major issue if you really are determined enough to actually vote. And I know that the people who are going to argue against it are going to be people from left-wing parties who obviously benefit from voter fraud, or so it seems. And those who want to bring in voter ID are going to be more right-leaning parties, because they know that people who tend to be more rule-abiding and follow rules to the letter tend to vote for them. So yes, there is cynicism on both sides. I get that. But at the same time, I still believe that you should, in a decent law-abiding society, there's nothing wrong with asking when you go to cast your vote, are you the actual person you say you are? And I'm not just saying it's just down to one particular ethnic group, because it isn't, because of the fact we had all these bloody students voting twice in 2017. And I would, if I was the Electoral Commission, I would investigate it, and any student that was caught voting twice should have been slapped with something like a 20 grand fine just to fuck them up for the arrogance of just thinking, oh, I'm going to vote for Corbyn twice because I think I'm going to get my fees written off. Well, in that case, then we should slap 2 slots of fees on you as punishment to say, fuck you, you little arrogant bastards.
To be fair, I know a lot of people are saying, oh, you need ID cards. Not on this pilot scheme, you don't need ID cards. But even if you do need ID cards, it's a case of, if you're in this country legally, you get a form of ID cards. You get ID cards. It's not a case of, oh, you're not going to get anything. It's the same as if you're old. You're telling me that nobody that's got any sort of picture ID card, for instance, if you're in London, an Oyster card, and that's for old age pensioners, obviously, not for fucking general Oyster cards, because I know they're plain because they used to live there. But old age pensioners that get Oyster cards or travel cards have to take their ID and their pictures. Even if they don't drive, that's an ID card. For people that are younger, they still have to go on to benefits, which still have to pass a form of identification. If you can pass forms of identification to get benefits, you'll easily pass one to be able to get and vote. I don't know why everybody's getting so uptighty about fucking getting ID to vote. Surely if you're a citizen, you have a form of identification. And let me just tell you something about the idea of actual having proof of identity. You have 3 classifications. You have Class A, you have Class B, and you have Class C. If you have any sort of form of utility bill, whether that be a Sky bill or a bank statement or anything like that, that is classed as a Class A document, which means you only need 1 or 2 of them to be able to pass most ID checks. It's just a case of that. If you got 3 B class documents, which is anything lower than that, which is something that's over 4 or 5 months old, then it's a case of you get on with it. You can even use things as bank cards as identification. It's just not a case of having a picture on it.
Yeah.
I don't understand why people are getting so fucking pissed off with the fact of, oh no, you need ID cards. So what? That's the price it pays to be able to vote properly, to make sure there's no fraud going on.
Yeah, like I said, common sense. There is a sort of a definite political reasoning for a lot of people to be against it, and it will all be disguised as, like I said, the bigotry of low expectation, which is immigrants and other people are just too stupid to have ID. And no, it's all about current political persuasions benefiting from the status quo we currently have. But I do generally believe that it will be rolled out nationwide, personally, because after 2017, I think they've realised, not just because of May being a shockingly shite prime minister, but I think there was a lot of questionable voting activity going on, and if the Tories got any common sense at all, then they definitely will actually have this implemented before 2022.
No, I agree with you, Bollocks. I really do agree with you. I mean, I'm looking at the chat, and I can understand most of the people that are saying this are very intelligent people, but most of them saying, oh, slippery slope. Having a form of identification, as in a fucking driving license, to produce at a polling station is not the same as chipping everyone or having tattoos embedded onto you. That means taking away personal fucking rights. That is not the same as asking you to produce identification that you need in everyday life to go and vote. It's not the same thing. Nowhere near the same thing. To go and chip something or get tattoos on you, that means you have to literally strip away human rights to force somebody to do something. What they're saying and what we're saying is to produce identification is not the same as that. There is no slippery slope on it. Once you produce ID, you're producing identification. There is no need for anything else.
Yep.
I just don't understand that. I understand the idea of a slippery slope, but for that to happen, they have to strip away so much fucking shit for it to happen.
I mean, I can understand what Cabby's getting at, but we've got to the point now where we got such a fragmented society. It's not like it used to be, where you could have a society full of people who had this sort of the moral compass built into them from birth. And even though I am one of those people, I prefer the government to stay out of things as much as possible. In this case, I do not have a problem with being asked if I go to the voting booth, who, are you the person that your voting slip claims that you are? I have no problem with that. If they just say, can I see your driving license or anything? There you go. As you can see, that's my name. That's my face. That's who I am, Mr. M. Bollocks. That is my
second. Cabbage Patch has just put in. You think once there is an ID card that they will not require you to carry it the time? Why would they? First of all, why would they even give you an ID card when you have provisional driving license that's classed as identification, where you have actual national ID cards that you can give to immigrants, which is two different forms of identification that we can't have? For instance, they wouldn't ask us to have one because we have passports, for instance. You also have passports for immigrants that are coming in as well, for ones that do have them. So why would they require you to carry it at all times? When you're young, you have to carry ID to get drink. When you are trying to learn to drive, you have to pass the test. That is identification. It's not asking for a whole new identification card. It's asking you to produce ID that you should already fucking have. There is no conspiracy in this point. It's asking you to bring the actual identification you already have. That is all.
That is all.
I'm sorry. I'm with people on most conspiracy theories, but on this, I can't even wrap my head around it. It takes from one having identification that you already fucking have, that you already use in everyday life anyway. And by the way, if you're driving, Moz, and you don't carry your driving license, it's a case of you're not going to be able to prove that you're holding a driving license. It's the same thing. And just because you don't actually have a picture ID on it, it's still the case that they can actually use the actual license to prove who you are. It's not part of any process, Cabby, because they're not asking you to produce any new material or any new cards. They're not saying, oh, well, we'll just make it easy for everyone and we'll make it a case of we'll produce a new identification card just for voting. They haven't even suggested anything like that. All they're saying is bring identification that you should already have to be able to vote. I don't see where it is. Yeah, because I'm annoyed. That's the reason, memes. I'm annoyed because there is no fucking slippery slope on this, because they're not carrying anything. They're not asking you to produce anything or even try to make anything. There's anything new. Jesus.
I think Cabby's in full troll mode tonight. I can see it from his point of view. Yes, he's obviously worried about, every time they do something like this, it normally leads on to something else. But is that it's because of how fragmented our society now is, unfortunately. I'd love to have this system where, you genuinely were in a, I was going to say working, they don't work in a fucking voting booth. If when you walk in with that slip with, the person you claim to be, that every single person is legitimate. It's just nowadays, it ain't like that anymore. And we know damn well there's been a lot of voting fraud in certain areas that needs to be tackled, at least in some way. Because if they don't, you're going to have people eventually questioning, well, what's the point in voting with all this fucking voter fraud? Because if one set of people start getting away with it, what's going to stop other people? So, I mean, there's no way that they're ever going to be able to do this. It's going to please everybody. There's always going to be people complaining that you're either being, bigoted towards certain ethnic groups or whatever, or another group saying, oh, it's infringing on personal freedoms. Well, what's the happy medium? Maybe, how about we don't vote at all? How about we just, install a government that we all trust and will, never do anything and never abuse its power?
Of course not. Obviously, Cabby's put in twice, so I imagine it 3 times, in the chat at this moment in time, that if they can get on the electoral register, then they already have circumvented the bureaucracy. I'm not sure when was the last time that you registered to actually get on the electoral register. All you have to do is go to gov.org, go to electoral register, go to register, and then type in the name and address. They then send you out a polling card. So when you say that they're circumventing bureaucracy, they're not. All they're doing is registering a name and a place. So that's the reason why we actually need to have identification to prove who you are and where you're living. Just to say.
Do we have any more topics, Common Sense?
Unfortunately not, believe it or not. I thought these 7 stories would actually take us up to the 2 hours. I mean, we're only around about 8 minutes ish from the actual top of 2 hours, so we've only got 8 minutes to cover. I think we can manage.
Yeah, no, I was worried there a little bit. Was that there's a little bit of tension building up there, and I just wanted to keep everybody in the right mood. Is that we're to discuss. We're not here to trigger. We're not here to troll. We're here to enjoy.
I'm everybody triggered.
We're getting dangerously close, but
all right. I find it funny. I honestly do find it funny. I mean, I do get a little bit annoyed, but I do find it funny that if they ask us for identification, then they're going to stick things in our body. How did you even get from that one bit to the next?
I think that might be called extreme paranoia, but the thing is, I do understand where Cabby's coming from. I do understand the concern, which is the bit by bit, step by step, and we have seen a lot of that in recent years. To get to, it goes back to that question I asked earlier on, which is what happened to university days, early 2000s, to the fucking mess we're into now, where just somebody with slightly the wrong opinion. It might even be a speaker going to a university campus to do a speech on why voter ID is a good thing. He might get deplatformed because he's classed as a bigot and a racist against ethnic minorities because they're apparently too dumb to get their, identification in order. And slippery slope in terms of
there's so many things. Guys in the chat.
Oh, I see. He's decided to become a troll himself now.
Everybody is at me. But I do have to say, at least Moz is fighting in my corner by actually saying, no, you can actually get national insurance numbers actually really easy. Because otherwise you don't get benefits. But it is
incredibly easy.
Form of identification for that as well. So, easy to provide an identification, maybe.
Yeah. So I don't know. We could argue about this for absolute fucking days. We're not going to, but I'm trying to see it from all angles. But I must admit, I'm more on common sense's side on this one, which is that it has got to the point now that I'm sorry, the populace, a certain percentage of them cannot be trusted, and I'd like to think when voting does happen that voter fraud is kept to the absolute minimum that it's actually possible to do. You'll never completely eradicate it, and if you did, you were probably living in a country that was run by a dictator anyway.
Yeah. A national insurance number is not proof of residency. A national insurance number is only proof that you want to work and the fact that you're actually around the country. You can get a national insurance number and then fuck off and then come back in 10 years' time. is not proof of residency. It's proof that you're registered with the council or the state. It's not an ID card. Just to let you know on that one.
I like what Cabby said there, which is no national insurance number, no electoral register. That's almost like saying the next, we're talking to slippery slopes. Why not go to the next one, which is no national insurance contributions, no vote.
Yeah, if you're on benefits, you're not allowed to vote.
Yeah, when do we stop then? Which is, if people earning less than 50 grand a year, well, they're obviously, working class, so you're not entitled to vote. We can go back to the days where only fucking, lords were allowed to vote. People with titles.
And they knew what they were talking about. I'm not being triggered again.
Yeah. Do you want to actually spend the next 4 minutes or however long we got left talking about your vid today? Because that's the reason I was late today, I forgot to say, was because I was watching your video.
Oh, yeah, go on then. Yeah, sure.
Yes, which is the endless stifling of Brexit by our unelected House Upper Chamber trying... I don't know if anybody from outside the UK has seen the wonderful speeches that were being made by our lords. I think it was Monday, wasn't it, when they were... I forget which one it was, but basically called... he basically said that we're going to try to stop this train wreck called Brexit.
Wasn't that Heseltine?
Probably, because it sounds like the kind of thing he would say.
Or Ken Clark. It's either Ken Clark or Heseltine.
I don't think it'd be Ken Clark because he's still an MP, isn't he?
Yeah. Sorry,
but yes, one of the lords was very nice to point this out, and twice now there's been votes on the customs deal go through the lords, and both times they've been defeated because the lords think that they can derail it, the actual Brexit deal, by keeping us tied to a, if not a form of customs union, because what they're aiming for is Brexit in name only, effectively, which is they'll say, well, we're not members of the single market anymore, but if you remain in any form of customs union with the EU, you are still obliged to make contributions and still be bound by their, is it 4 or 5 freedoms? I can never remember if it's 4 or 5. It's trade, labor, oh fuck man, I can only name 2 out of 5. Well, there's 5 what's called freedoms anyway, and you're still bound by them, even though. And we would end up effectively in the worst case of all worlds, because we would no longer have a seat at the table. We'd have no input in any future decisions. Not that we really had many anyway, and we would still be bound by like not the European Court of Human Rights, the European Court of Justice. We still be bound by decisions by them. We wouldn't be able to strike all the supposed free trade deals that we were promised we'd be able to. There's a lot of bad shit coming out of the upper chamber at the moment, and there is a petition on the Gov website at the moment to get the House of Lords abolished, which has just recently gone over 100,000.
Yeah, it's not going to happen though. As much as
it's never going to happen. But at least it's nice to know they're going to debate it. So that'll be interesting to hear the bullshit that they actually come out with to defend it.
They debated freedom of speech. Yes, we should have freedom of speech. Yes, we agree. We have what we call freedom of expression. Blah 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 blah. Oh, is that matter done? Never mind then.
But what the difference was there, it got past 10,000. They made their statement about, you already have free speech. We respect free speech. But, and then they shut it down. Yeah. Well, at least with the one with the House of Lords one, because it's gone over 100,000, they are now obliged to debate it in Parliament at some point. But I wonder if they'll try and keep it going until after they've probably decided to agree to an agreement to keep us in a single market.
Yeah. See, I don't mind keeping the idea of keeping us in a single market or in a customs union, but by no fucking means should we stay anywhere near the customs union or the single market.
Yeah, it is well, it's sickening really to see that these unelected peers are able to disrupt what effectively should be a reasonably simple set of legislations that the government should bring in, which is this is what we're going to, expect to do after next April. This is what we intend to do, which is that once April 2019's been and gone, effectively we are classed as now being outside the EU, but we have this 2-year transition period where rules, regulations, and all that are basically rewritten and changed from European constitution into British constitution, and it does sound like a lot of fucking about really and faffing to try and slow the process down, but I still am reasonably optimistic that what will happen is that we will either get some kind of deal, which means we will be out fully, or we will end up with no deal. I don't think they're going to get the single market, the customs union deal, because I think it will generally cause a massive split in the Tory party and potentially bring the government down. Plus, the DUP wouldn't stand for it anyway, and that would end up causing a potential another general election, which I still don't think fucking Corbyn would win if yesterday's anything to go by. And then you'd probably end up with a potential a Boris-led government, which I think will be more inclined to be the sort of government that we want to get us out of the EU. So I think for the Lords, it's going to be a lose-lose if they keep pushing this. I can really see once all Brexit's sorted out, if they are constantly causing problems, that maybe that might be a motivator for the government at the time to actually start getting a lot of Blair's cronies out of there and purging it a bit to make it a bit more placid to whatever the Commons wants. And also, if you've got this big vote on the YouGov website saying that we want the Lords abolished, they can say, well, if we put a vote to the public to say, do you want to abolish the House of Lords, there's a fucking good chance they're going to vote to say get rid of you. So you've got a choice here. If you don't agree to cut down your numbers and get rid of a lot of these fucking appointees that were put in during fucking New Labour's era, we're going to let the public vote you all out.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I would absolutely love that. Being able to get them to vote out. Actually, instead of typing this out, I'm actually going to say it. For actually getting a national insurance cover, you don't actually need to prove the actual abode where you live, and you don't need to prove how long you've lived there either. It's just a case of, say that I lived in 24 Century Street, and I've lived there for about 2 weeks. I can go get a national insurance number as long as I get it posted to there. As soon as I get that national insurance posted there, it doesn't matter where I reside anymore. That's the problem with national insurance numbers. You don't actually need to reside anywhere for any length of time to get one. It's just a case you need to have an address where you can pick it up. That's it. Anyway, enough on that. Let's go back to the Lords. The actual point with the Lords is, for me, it's a case of, if you're going to sit there as unelected fucking bureaucrats, which is basically what you're supposed, which you are, or they are, and you're then going to say, well, no, we disagree with this withdrawal bill because government doesn't get a vote on the trade deals. Did you ever have the votes on trade deals? Any trade deal has ever happened in any part of history in the UK? Did that actually... Cabby, yes, it did help. Because if you have an electricity bill, you normally have it for either over a year or 6 months or 3 months or a month, which means that you paid something for a month, which means you have resided in a place for a month and you have somewhere which is generally on a direct debit. So, yes, the actual electricity bill is actually higher up than what a national insurance number would be. It is why when you go into any job, they don't ask you for proof of identification for any national insurance number, and ask for proof of identification, electricity bill, a bank statement, or whatever. They don't ask you for a national insurance number as identification. They do it so they can hire you, so they can produce money and get tax off of you, not as an identification. Again, last one. That's it. I'm not even going to bother anymore.
Yeah.
Yes, on the Lords, very, very quickly. Yes, it's fucking amazing that unelected people are actually coming out and saying, "Oh, we're going to actually scrutinize this bill." Okay, let's scrutinize the bill. We're going to make sure that government can vote on the final thing. Okay, great. You now say that we're not going to have the final deal. Guess what? We still leave. We still actually leave Europe, and that means we go in World Trade Organization rules. So your whole principle of having the vote on the deal does fuck all to scupper Brexit. All it does is scupper the deal with Brexit. Because, you want a referendum or a vote on the actual deal, not on the Brexit. So by definition, as what you're saying, you are focusing on the wrong part if you want to stop Brexit.
Yep. Yeah, that's the thing. I'd like to think they're smart enough to understand this. I suppose they've still got that ridiculous mindset, which is they can persuade the general public to vote on, the final deal in a sort of what's the right word? A kind of a second referendum that isn't a second referendum. But as Common Sense has quite rightly pointed out, is that since Article 50 is triggered, it is the rules of Article 50 are quite simple, which is it's a 2-year allowance to come to a deal with the EU on how you wish now to trade with them and deal with them. And after those 2 years are up, you're out. You're no longer a member of the European Union. And I mean, that's exactly what I want to happen. And that's what most believers want to happen. We'd ideally prefer to have, new deals in place because it will make, it a lot easier for all of us, really, for not just us, but also for, the EU themselves, the EU countries. But if we don't strike a deal, then we'll just, there will be a no-deal situation. We'll crash out of the EU and we'll just start dealing with them on WTO terms. And we already know that Germany quietly has been saying to the EU Commission, for fuck's sake, don't allow that to happen, because they know what will happen. Suddenly, we will be able to slap imports on tariffs on their imports if we want, and people are going to stop buying them because they don't want to pay, say, 5% more on their cars than they could buy, say, UK manufactured motors. Even if they are owned by foreign companies, they'll still be a lot cheaper. Goes with everything that's coming in from the EU. They probably wouldn't do that, but it's still a possibility. And if they want to play silly buggers, then why don't we play it back?
Yep. But to be honest, I mean, I don't really have any sort of love for the Lords, and I have no real love for the European Council or the federal state of European Union. I don't really have much love for any of them whatsoever. To me, it's just a case. I'm not really bothered what the deal is. As I said in the video today, if we go on World Trade Organizations, I don't really care. That means food and fucking clothing is going to be a hell of a lot fucking cheaper for me. I already have a car. I don't need to go buy a car from somewhere else. I don't need to buy stuff that's being imported or exported. I don't need all of that. Most of the stuff I can find what I want in this country. If not, there's already enough of it to be able to be sold. So I'm not really that bothered about World Trade Organization rules. But that's the point. These smart aleck people that are going, oh, we should have a vote on the deal. We should have a referendum on the deal. Go ahead. I don't really care. You can't stop Brexit because you have to stop Article 50. It's the only way of stopping Brexit in itself is by stopping Article 50 or pretending that you've stopped Article 50, depending on what the government actually wants to do with it. That's something completely different. But if we're going on by actual fucking rules, then you have to stop Article 50 so we can leave.
Yep.
And people don't see that if you're going to stop the deal on it, all you're doing is stopping the beneficial points that have been made by the Conservatives, whether they be good or bad. All you're doing is stopping them from happening, not Brexit.
Yep. But I say let them carry on, common sense, because I think that's what potentially could happen, and it'll just come to bite them on the ass. And I mean, I am looking forward to, when is it? Is it the 29th of April next year? Because I suspect there's going to be a hell of a lot of meltdowns on social media of lefties, all them sad fucks who are out protesting after the vote. I don't know if there'll still be as many of them, but the whole idea that we're no longer in the EU anymore and Britain has become another fascist country now that we've left the EU, it's going to be beautiful. It might even be the day when Owen Jones does us all a favor and actually, fully starts transitioning.
That'd be amazing, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
it'd be amazing. But the second half of the video as well, what I did from the 38 degrees, that worries me more than what the House of Lords is doing, because the House of Lords, even though it's doing it unhandedly, it's doing it in plain view, even though it's trying to be unhanded.
Yeah.
But this 38 degrees that emailed me, because I sign a couple of petitions here and there, so it sends me things all the time. It sent me this thing that was like, "Oh, Brexit's really bad. Brexit's this. Brexit's that." And it's like, you're not partisan at all, are you? You don't have a side. You're not trying to tell me how to think and what to vote and how to sign. And that thing was literally just saying to me, you need to do this because we're scared that we're going to have Donald Trump in our country. We're scared because you're going to have to sign up with America to have this chlorinated chicken, and it's going to destroy our natural resources. It's going to destroy everything else. And it's just, nah. It's not going to do that at all. You're literally placing red herrings and straw man just to put in place to scare people.
You wouldn't mind so much, would you, if they were just being honest about it, which is, oh, Brexit's terrible. For my bank account, I'm quite rich and I'd like to stay that way. If they at least were honest about that and said that, the EU's made me very, very wealthy and I'd like it to remain that way. I've got a nice big fat EU pension coming my way and it's going to be cancelled next April unless we put a stop to this. At least then you could respect them for being honest. But when they start going on about all this shit, about, oh, it's going to be economical suicide for Britain and all that stuff, and all the other shit they came out with during Project Fear, that, I believe, was a fine example of people not buying the bullshit for one of the first times ever. And because I suppose what also didn't help was that the people got to see how they used it just 2 years before. Well, no, it was 2 years before when they had the Scottish referendum. And I think that's the first time I ever properly saw propaganda for what it was. Just relentless, the whole establishment, hand in hand, basically saying to the Scots, don't do this. And you really had to ask yourself why. And it had just come down to the same thing. It was rich people would potentially lose money. That's all it was. And the same thing with this is that it's actually going to be beneficial to the ordinary people.
Bollocks. Let them know that they are, for the little guy. They're not for the elites. They're for the little guy.
Well, you see, if they actually told the truth, then they would say, well, actually, this probably will work out better for you, or could do in the long term, because, if freedom of movement is curtailed and we actually start, having a sensible immigration system, then employers won't have a endless, pool of cheap labor to employ, and then they might actually have to start
raising
wages to compete with the ridiculously overgenerous welfare system to attract people. So, people will be able to demand better wages, better terms and conditions, and then they'll be able to afford better, better lifestyles, be able to afford better houses, and suddenly the economy might start growing properly instead of having piss poor productivity, and people will be able to afford houses without it swallowing up ridiculous amounts of their income.
I hate that argument where economists now go, oh, Brexit's so bad, everything's going on that's really good, but we've got really bad productivity. Do you know why we have bad productivity? We don't fucking make anything. That's the reason why we have bad productivity, not because the economy's tanking. It's because we don't make anything. even if we were to employ fucking the rest of the world in the factories that we had, we do not make anything. Productivity would not go up.
Yep. Yeah. That's the one thing they never really talk about. They only talk about the GDP figures. Oh, look at that. We've got GDP growth of like 0.7% this quarter. When you actually look about what's actually growing, it's mainly people selling each other cheap coffee and bankers creating more debt. That's it. Yeah. The actual, like you said, making stuff to sell that actually is what proper economic growth is. It's right on the floor and it's barely moved for the last 10 years.
Yep. And it's not going to. It's not going to move because we outsource everything to everywhere. It's like this argument with people going, oh, we need to outsource the NHS so we can get in nurses and everything else like that. Yeah, fine. I understand that they're needed now and please come over and help us. We need the help. But that doesn't give a long run and doesn't give fucking proper economics to the actual problem. The problem is that we're not staffing people from the country, meaning we're not producing nurses. We're not producing people in HR. We're not producing doctors that want to stay in this country to work in the hospitals. We need to find out the reasons why, change it, and then put them back into the hospitals and into infrastructure again. We need to make sure that we put some incentives into doing nursing and making sure that doctors are getting paid properly. Because otherwise, we're going to lose it, and our NHS is going to be completely foreignly run because they won't have any English people in there because nobody will want to be a fucking nurse or a doctor anymore.
Mm-hmm. I see Mars has brought up an interesting point, which he said, do we no longer make anything by EU design? Now, there is a theory, and again, it's only a theory, I cannot prove this, that the beginning of the wind up of British manufacturing, as a big percentage of our GDP, was coincidentally the sort of mid 70s when we sort of hit the sort of peak unionist movement, and then from the rise of Margaret Thatcher up until the modern day, where the hard industries were effectively allowed to be sold off to private firms and then sent to the Far East for cheaper labor. And yet through that time the Germans were incentivized to keep their manufacturing bases, and they pretty much have most of them left. Not all, some of them obviously have gone because they can't compete, but they still do have a lot of heavy industry. And there is a sort of a belief that when the EEC was originally formed, the idea is that each block would have a certain segment apply to it. And so, like, the Germans would be given hard industry, the French would be given agriculture, and Britain would end up with finance. Now, that is how it's turned out. I don't know if that's necessarily was the game plan, but the timing of it was very, very suspicious. That it was only after we entered the EEC did the wind up of British manufacturing really begin. Obviously, it was slow to start with. Then you had things like the strike throughout the 70s. You had the winter discontent. Then you obviously had the lead on to the Thatcher government, and then she really went hard at it. Crushing the unions, deregulations, privatizations. Not any of that you saw in Germany, even though most of the other European countries were doing similar at the time.
There's a reason for that, though.
What's that, mate?
It was the fact that because our factories and the people that worked in those factories had such high wages for that time period, it was a case of it was actually cheaper to outsource than it was to try and get more people to insource. And that's what happened with the coal mining. That's what happened with the factories. That's what happened with some of the train making and other fucking nationalized points as well that went across seas.
Well, part of the problem is because we had the big oil crisis at the start of the 70s. And because that caused massive amounts of inflation, which of course led to the
communism resolution.
Yeah, well, that's what caused the oil crisis. Yes, the not that we want to blame communism for anything. the knock-on effect obviously was massive inflation in places like America and here. And the difference between, say, if we had it now and then was we had obviously very strong unions at the time. And that's why you had Heath government at the time imposing things such as the 3-day week, because oil and other raw materials were becoming ridiculously expensive. Normal everyday things such as bread and was becoming incredibly expensive. And the unions had the power at the time to start demanding incredible wage increases. And they got it because effectively they had the means to do so. And also a lot of the companies back then were still state owned. So if they went on strike, things like, your telephone and your, electric weren't going to work.
The strikes actually had an effect on the people, and the people moaned to the government because, people actually affect government.
Yes. And so you had big pay increases then to compensate for the inflation, which meant that suddenly, like Common Sense was saying, these people doing these jobs, and a lot of them weren't particularly that skilled jobs, were earning money that, was far in excess of what it should have been for what was effectively a temporary blip because of the oil crisis, which then obviously had the knock-on effect later on, which is they were then incredibly uncompetitive with the rest of the world, which gave them obviously the great excuse, and especially under old Maggie, to start offshoring it, which is you're not competitive anymore. I mean, when you look at how uncompetitive British coal was in the late 70s and early 80s, which obviously led to the the big massive strikes you saw in the early 80s. The British coal was just losing millions and millions in pounds. It was never going to be profitable. And so you can't, a government can't keep pouring money into an industry that's just losing money hand over fist, and you can't privatize it. Who the hell is going to take on that industry? So again, I was brought up in a household that was told that, Maggie's evil, and all these coal miners should have been, left alone, or they should have had more subsidies and all that. I said, no, it doesn't work that way, I'm afraid. It doesn't work that way. And the thing is, they would have gone anyway because of all this bullshit about, moving off of coal and onto supposedly cleaner means of, producing fuel anyway. But, I do wonder how much of an influence it was that, Britain had to get rid of its hard industry anyway, for the whole idea of the, the eventual creation of the EU to have these super blocks that each do their own thing. So I don't know. I've read about the theory before, and when you look at it from from a perspective, you can think that it does kind of look like a big jigsaw puzzle that fits all too neatly into place. So there might be somebody out there with some hard evidence. If they are, they've probably been killed and left on a park bench one night. But I honestly don't know. But it is a bit suspect to me for it not to be true. That's all I would say.
I mean, as I said before, I quite like conspiracy theories. I like the idea of theories. I wouldn't say necessarily that it was a implementation that's happened between the 70s has been implied. I would say it might have kickstarted in the late 80s. I would suggest that. I definitely would suggest in the late 80s, between 85 and onwards. I would honestly feel that it would be like that.
Mm-hmm.
It just seems that everything started to seriously collapse, and I mean like places like Dagenham, which was known for fucking building all the cars and everything else like that. That was closing at those points in time.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that was when the suffragettes and everything else were like that were supposed to be getting a vote and everything else like that after the Second World War and whatnot. So that's where you get all of that sort of points. It's a case of, for me, the theory works, and if a theory works, you have to try and disprove that theory in your own head. And if you can't disprove that theory in your head, even if it's not somebody that says, "Oh, it started in the 70s," and you can go, "Well, maybe." Maybe. I mean, you could look at the implementation and say, maybe it did, maybe it didn't. It would have been a long fucking idea if it did start there. Now, I'm not that smart. I wouldn't have fought for that length of time, but some people are, and some people would scheme. So maybe. But you could definitely say from 1985 onwards, in at least the UK, things were put into place where it looked like they destroyed factory and factory living in itself. Factories do not work the same way as they used to anymore. They're nowhere near as big. They're nowhere near as employ as many people as they used to. It just doesn't work that way anymore.
Yeah.
So I'd say it's a good theory, to be fair.
Yeah, that's why I've always sort of thought there's probably something in it. But again, without any sort of hard evidence, it's hard to it's hard to say. But it's just when you look at it objectively, you can think to yourself, well, that does look a bit suspect. But the problem is that we have an even bigger population than we did 40 years ago. And yet and they keep saying like, oh, more people in the UK are employed than ever before. Of course, what they fail to mention is that more people are employed part-time than ever before. The amount of actual full-time employment, and I'm talking about people with actual fixed full-time employment, not people on 0-hour contracts or whatever else they stick them on these days, has pretty much stagnated now for quite a while.
Yep.
And, you know, so you can have all these so-called jobs in the economy, but if they're not giving you the hours and they're certainly not giving you the pay, then people's standard of life is not getting any better. In fact, it's probably considerably got worse. But the governments are very, very good at being able to come out with facts and figures that on first appearance, a quick glance, and you'll think, oh, everything's fine. I still remember my dear old neighbor when she still used to live next door, who I was talking to her a few years ago, and she was saying, oh, how's everything at your workplace? And I said at the time, it's not that great at the moment. And she said, oh, that's surprising. I was reading in the paper about how everything's getting much better. And I said, what did you actually read? She said, oh, you know, they were showing like the fact that the country's been, you know, growing continuously now since 2009. You know, we had the one recession. Everything's all so much better now. And I said, yeah, you're just reading government spin, I'm afraid. You know, numbers and figures that are made to look like everything's rosy and wonderful. And as somebody who's, you know, retired and on a fixed income and living quite comfortably, I'm sure it does all look nice and rosy and wonderful. But, you know, they're in the real world, I'm afraid. No, afraid not.
I kind of disagree with you, but for different reasons. But at the same time, I actually see your point and can actually see your reasoning behind it. In aspects of job security, yeah, we're at the worst that we've ever been. Besides being able to buy your own house, the fact that most households have 2 cars, the fact that almost every household has Sky, possibly 2 to 3 TVs in their household, I can't see how we're worse off than what we were, apart from the fact of not being able to buy your own home or work security. Now, don't get me wrong. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. Those 2 things are fucking important.
I see what you mean, Commissar. Yeah. In terms of the tat, right? This is where things have gone the wrong way round, okay? Is that once upon a time when our parents were, well, not even our age, even younger than us, they might have been they would have got their jobs in their sort of late teens, early 20s, probably married mid-20s, or if not sooner. And then they potentially buying their own house around about that sort of age. And now, back then, you could buy a house on, say, the one man's wage for maybe 2.5 times, maybe 3 times his wage. And on a, you know, whatever the interest rate was back then, 6-7% for 25 years. The house would have been, what, about 7,000 or 8,000 pounds. Sometimes, you know, 10, depending on if you had a good house. And so the actual buying of the house that you were going to live in, the thing that, you know, that housed you, was, in terms of your wage, relatively well priced. The stuff that you put in your house, the tat, now that was expensive. And the reason it was expensive because it was all made here in the West. So your television was expensive, your furniture was expensive, your bed was expensive. So the stuff people had, the things, the necessities were expensive. So they didn't have a lot of stuff in their house like we do now. Whereas now it's the other way around. All the crap that we buy is all mass China produced tat, but it's cheap. So we can fill our houses now with loads of crap because it's cheap. Your furniture, compared to what it would have been back in the 70s, is dirt cheap. People might be saying, oh, bloody, like 300 quid for a sofa and all that. But when you consider in today's money, a sofa back in the 70s would have probably been about 1,500 quid. That's the difference, you say. But what's happened is that the tat is now cheap, but the house itself now takes 2 full-time workers about 5 times their combined wages. That's the difference. So from a what's the word?
Modern day perspective.
I was trying to think of what you call when people got lots of stuff.
Materialistic.
Yeah, from a materialistic point of view, we certainly are a lot better off. People now have far more stuff than they did before. Like you said, they got like the Sky, they got the 2 cars and all this sort of stuff. But people aren't necessarily better off. In fact, in terms of how much money they're probably spending, their disposable income's going, because those 2 cars are more likely on the knock. So that's monthly payment. They probably can't afford insurance in one go. That's on the knock. They probably got credit card bills. They probably got student debt. They're obviously paying this bloody great enormous mortgage. So
what you're saying is it's just not worth it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Burn the fucking world down, everybody. It's a waste of time. Yeah.
Well, we're definitely coming to the end of our stream because it's coming up to fucking 11:45.
I really didn't want to end on such a negative thing, but when you put it like that, yeah, I basically just told everybody give up.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you want to tell everybody what situation is from now on, or do you want to leave it? Or
no, I was going to leave it to the final words, mate.
That's fine. That's not a problem. Well, in that case, then it's final words. Off you go.
Wonderful. I expect some of you know, some of you may not know. This is my final stream as part of this group. I've decided that after 6 months, it's time to move on. I've outgrown the fold. It's time to do some new stuff on my own. I mean, you are probably all familiar with the stuff I do anyway. It's not been an easy decision to make, but it is what it is. I'm not going to go into details about it. It's not important. All that is important is that I won't be here anymore, but I know that the Ogre and the Common Sense will continue to entertain you all, to bring you the news of the ridiculousness of the world as it is. And I hope that in the time I've spent with them, that I have contributed to the stories that they brought to the table. I hope that I've been able to be educational, but more so be amusing. The thing I've always tried to be. Sometimes I am amusing when I don't intend to be, which is just an unfortunate fact of me sometimes getting my facts back to front. But I do hope that I'm going away and people are going to be glad that I have been there for a while. I hope that people will think back to my time that it was all right. That's as long as at least one person has been entertained, and I've known I've done my job, and that's good enough for me. I will miss you all. It's been fun. All the shit talking and nonsense I've spouted, and all the times me and Common Sense have have managed to either wind each other up or wind up Ogre, or get somebody in the chat going, or somebody getting the chat getting us going. It's been a lot of fun, and I don't want this to be a goodbye as such, just a acknowledgement that I won't be here anymore. We're all still friends. We will stay that way, I'm sure. We just won't work in the same office anymore. But my channel will live on. I will still do BNN. I'll still do more episodes of Talking Bollocks, and I will eventually get back to my pissboard gaming again. And I've got a few ideas of things I'd like to do. And I'm sure Common Sense will probably pop in occasionally to say hello in one of those shows. Not that I'm giving anything away. But yeah, as of now, I am an ex-member of the Ogre Show, and I just want to take this opportunity to thank Common Sense and Ogre for ever inviting me in, which even now I still can't get my head around. How I went from an absolute nobody to actually having a presence on the internet like that was very, very strange. My whole YouTube career has been a joke. From this very moment I joked to Ogre, let me on, and he accepted. He's insane and should never have done it. And even more insane, this Common Sense should never have said, this bloke's okay, let him on. Should never have said it. I know I wouldn't have done. But thank you so much, the pair of you, but mainly thank you all in the chat for putting up with me these months. It's been a learning experience, but I'm proud to say I now have more people I can actually call mates than I did do at the start of this all. I've met some wonderful people. I do enjoy your company. You all make me laugh. You're all mad, and it's it's going to be fun to whatever comes next. I can't really think of better ways to put it at the moment. So all I can say is thank you very much, everybody, and good night.
Well, thank you very much for actually even coming on for the first time, or even, in fact, first of all, actually wanting to come on. I find that absolutely amazing. The actual story in itself is quite an amazing little one in itself. How you'll come up and we'll took you under our ring, so to speak, and then just let you flutter by and fly. There was some bits at the beginning, and as Ogre has said before, and I've said before, and I won't hide it, there was a couple of bits at the beginning where I personally was to the point of going, you didn't really talk much, you didn't really add much, and lo and behold, you fucking ended up destroying most of the streams that we ever went on by completely and utterly derailing them. But that was the point. That was why you were there. You were there to be a jester of sorts. And yeah, I can't say that I've ever worked with anybody as honest as what you can be. Yeah, there's things that you say that are annoying and piss people off. But if we look at anybody on the internet or anybody in real life, that's no difference to what happens in general. It's a case of getting on with it and getting past it and seeing what happens in the future. And hopefully your future will be bright, so to speak. I can't really go into too much detail, but I'm looking forward to doing what we said that we were going to do together. I am actually quite looking forward to that. I think there's a lot that you can do with the YouTube that you, if you wanted to do, that you could quite easily get on and get it done. I think you're quite a talented guy. I'm not trying to kiss your ass, but it seems that way.
Kiss it, boy.
Pucker up there and
a bit of digital rimming going on there, boys.
It's all right. We're taking turns. I'm going first, apparently. I don't know how this works. Don't know how this worked, but yeah, I'm still going to say that I'm quite happy with working with everybody that I've ever worked with. I'm very happy with most people. But I'm always gonna remember you. You're gonna have a great big place in my heart, and I just don't want you to leave. But unfortunately, people outgrow their situations, and unfortunately, situations just change, and that's just the way that things are sometimes. Just got to be adult about it. Realize that people are doing it for the best thing for themselves, and if you care about that person, then you've got to let them go. You've got to set them free. And that's what we're doing here. We're putting Magic Bollocks back into his natural habitat, and that is to piss the whole lot of you lot off and make sure that he's having fun. But with that being said, I bid you farewell. I bid you adieu, and I'll see you all again real soon.